Chapter 31. Changes have been made. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. My hair is getting long. Izuku huffs, blowing a curl out of his face. Unfortunately, he doesn't know anyone who knows how to cut curly hair properly. Even his mom couldn't, having given up once he was 9 and leaving him to his own devices. And he's not allowed off campus, so he's off to borrow hair clips from Mina, who has a similar hair type to him. Hopefully, her stuff won't get caught in his hair like the hair clips he tried to borrow from his mom. Carefully, he knocks on Mina's door and waits. He hears a murmuring from inside and shifts, wondering if he should just ask in the morning. The door cracks open, and Mina peers out, looking suspicious. When he meets her eyes, he smiles sheepishly. Hey, I was wondering if I could, um, borrow hair ties or hair clips from you? My hair is getting kind of long, and it's annoying to push it out of my face all the time. She blinks, then a grin spreads across her face as she opens the door a little wider. Really? You're not going to cut it? Izuku shrugs, suddenly picking up the sound of someone whispering in Mina's room. Is this a bad time? I can come back later if... Nope, you're good. Why don't you come in? I'll grab some stuff for you. She opens the door and gestures for him to come in. Ah, thanks. The green-haired boy steps into the open door, eyes zeroing on the other 5 girls in the room, who wear pajamas and have their hair in completely different styles than normal. He looks away, fingers twitching, as Mina moves around him to close the door. It's fine. You know these people. They won't hurt you. This isn't a trap. No problem, she cheers, appearing right next to his left shoulder. He jumps, but gives her a polite smile and starts looking over the colorful room, avoiding the pile of girls, sweets, and various beauty products in the corner. It isn't any of his business, and he didn't want to make them uncomfortable. As she disappears into her closet, he shifts, tugging down the sleeve on his compression shirt a little further. This one was a little shorter sleeve than his other ones, and sometimes his tattoo would peek out. He doesn't want to deal with reactions like all mites and moms again. Hey Deku, Uraraka calls, and he has to repress a flinch, because that name and small enclosed spaces don't mix well in his experience. Fingers pressed to his wrist, he looks over at the group of girls with a faint smile. Hey Uraraka, how are you? She smiles and the other girls watch the interaction, even as Hagakure curls Tsuyu's hair. Good. We've been painting our nails, see? She holds out her hand for him, and he peers at it, his eyebrows raising at the sight of tiny white drawings and gems on her nails. Wow, that's really cool. Whoever did that must have a really steady hands, Izuku says. The smell of nail polish kind of reminds me of when Himiko would paint my nails. It was actually Tsu. She's so amazing, isn't she? I still can't believe how detailed she did them. He smiles, looking over to Tsu, who looks slightly more pink than normal as her lips curl into a smile. Thanks, Kiro, but you're all easy compared to my siblings. They always wiggle around Kiro. The girls giggle, and Izuku smiles along with them, silently wondering if Eri might want something like this. She probably doesn't even know what nail polish is. He sighs, resisting the urge to yawn. He's been reviewing past holders again, and slowly working his way through theories about the current quirks he has, and how to make a plan to effectively get the rest of them without anyone realizing what's going on. Unfortunately, he can only do so much, especially since Eri has started falling asleep in his lap. He's not unhappy with that. It's actually heart-wrenchingly adorable, but he can't really get much work done. So he's stuck theorizing and looking over dead people's lives. Okay, I have a couple of options here. Are you thinking just clipping up your bangs or pulling it up in a ponytail or trying to braid it? Mina appears in front of him, holding out a purple and black striped box to him. Ah, I just want to clip my bangs back. But a couple of hair ties would be nice too, just in case, you know. She smiles and nods, then pulls out a set of hair ties and some metal clips. Okay, these don't have the metal thingy they put on hair ties, so it shouldn't get caught in your hair. And the hair clips don't have anything that will catch either. Her pink fingers encircle the objects, and he takes them gratefully. Thank you so much, Ashido. I've been having some trouble managing my hair recently, so it'll be nice to have these to help. He gives Mina a smile, which she returns. No problem. He thanks her again, then retreats, letting out a sigh of relief once he's back out in the hallway, the tightness in his chest receding at the open space. Thank goodness that was quick. Underscore, 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 underscore. Today, Class 1A and Class 1B will be doing a joint foundational heroics class. The class erupts, making Eri jump and disappear into his blazer. He can't blame her. This level of noise makes him want to hide too. Instead, he closes his notebook and sets it in his backpack, then turns back to Aizawa-sensei, who chooses this moment to turn on his quirk, silencing the class. I expect you all to behave and do your best. Go and change into your costumes and meet me at Ground Alpha. Everyone stands up in sync, all rushing out the door quickly, clearly excited. Izuku takes his time picking up his backpack, then Eri, and making his way out the door last. He feels Aizawa's eyes on his back, which he pointedly ignores, and walks to the locker rooms. Like every other time they've done this, Eri holds the blazer over her head to cover her eyes, and he grabs his costume from his locker, replacing it with his backpack. Then he heads over to a stall, sets Eri down outside, and tells her to wait for a minute. He changes quickly, making sure everything is in place but his mask. He doesn't want to accidentally scare Eri, so he leaves it and the hood off. Yawning, he stretches and walks out of the stall to a nervous-looking Eri. The green-haired boy smiles and scoops her up. Don't worry about the other class. I'm sure they'll be nice. And if they overwhelm you, you can come to me, or Hitoshi, or Todoroki, okay? She nods, hands clutching the material of his suit. Hopefully they'll leave Eri alone entirely. Underscore, 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 underscore. Izuku walks behind his classmates as they approach Ground Alpha. They'd all gravitated towards each other, and various students exclaimed about how excited they are to finally interact with the other class. In his arms, Eri lets out a tiny yawn as she holds his neck, avoiding the sharp edges of his mouthguard. His lips twitch, but he keeps walking, resisting the urge to snap a picture of her cuteness. Ahead, the concrete walls of the training ground loom over them. He sees a group of brightly dressed students waiting at the gates with All Might, who's currently in his buff form. Idly, Izuku wonders how much time he has left. Probably not much. Though the green-haired boy has no doubt All Might would rather die than admit he's weakening and probably needs to retire soon to avoid widespread panic when he inevitably ran out of time. There'll be widespread panic either way, though. He sighs, stopping as Soro stops. It's not really his place to tell the symbol of peace what to do, much less after their discussion a month ago. The man still hadn't recovered from that, and honestly, Izuku wasn't ready to talk to him without yelling again, so he's glad that All Might hasn't contacted. The objective for today's exercise is to capture every opponent and put them in jail. Those in jail may not escape. Aizawa will divide you up into teams, and when all of one team is out, the other team wins. The students' low rumble starts up again once All Might stops talking, and Vlad King steps forwards, clipboard in hand. All right, Team 1 is underscore, 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 underscore. Everything is calm in the waiting room, and a couple of the more social people are already striking up conversations with different classes. In front of them, monitoring the first match through multiple TVs in front of them. He relaxes in his chair situated in the corner, keeping an eye on the general room as he talks to Eri. Class A bastards, you're all such posers. And why is one of you carrying around their stupid, illegitimate kid on campus? Aren't you supposed to be expelled for irresponsibility like that? Or is Class A too good for expulsions now? Izuku pointedly ignores the blonde. He remembers him from before the sports festival, and he did not want to deal with another inferiority complex disguised as a superiority complex for years. Bakugo was more than enough, thank you very much. The rest of his classmates, however, are more bothered by this. Hey, Eri isn't stupid, and they're not related. Stop being mean to them. Hagakure speaks up, gloves and boots. He wants to find her costume designers and have some words with them, because honestly, Her nudity is a liability at this point, waving frantically in the air. Did someone say something? The blonde asks, a cruel smile on his face. Instantly, Mina's face darkens, and she leaps to her feet. She said to stop, you dick! Why are you even acting like this? We didn't do anything to you. The blonde bursts into maniacal laughter that could rival Bakugo's, and Izuku resists the urge to just knock the blonde out until his turn, because that's not very hero-like. Eri looks uneasy at all of the arguing and tugs the gray blazer further over her head. He frowns, looking over to the argument again, which has gotten substantially louder and bigger. Mina, Hagakure, and Uraraka are there now, and the blonde's classmates are attempting to defuse the situation. Thankfully, Bakugo isn't here to make it worse, but the teachers are completely ignoring the argument, which is annoying. Isn't their job to make sure everything goes smoothly? That fights don't break out? A tiny voice in the back of his head whispers. He ignores it too, carefully wrapping his arms around Eri and pulling her closer, trying to shield her from the argument. That kid isn't even supposed to be here. She's a fuck. Izuku's eyes sharpen, and lightning crackles as he appears in front of the blonde, placing a hand over his mouth and staring him in the eyes. Said blonde freezes, pale purplish blue eyes, wide as acidic green eyes stare at him, picking him apart and leaving him feeling like a bug under a magnifying glass. Being rude isn't going to fix your inferiority complex. Therapy will. When you've done at least a month of regular visits, I'll take your complaints into consideration. He murmurs, watching a hint of fear flicker in the blonde's eyes. Now, sit down and mind your business. He removes his hand from the other boy's mouth, steering him towards an empty seat beside a girl in a red dress, and sitting him down. Done with the blonde, he turns around and dusts his hands off, lighting dying down as he walks back to Eri, who looks surprised by the sudden loss of her caretaker. The green-haired boy smiles and kneels down, pulling a bag of apple slices out of nowhere and offering them to her. Sorry about that. He was just using rude words and I didn't want him to hurt anyone's feelings. Eri blinks, then nods slowly, taking the apples in her tiny hands. He smiles. Underscore, 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 underscore. Whoa. Did we just see Midori go Papa Bear mode? Mina whispers, a grin slowly spreading across her face. I think we did. Hagakure whispers back, insults pushed to the back of her mind as she internally squeals over witnessing another Midoriya in Eri moment. That was nice of him, Uraraka says, a small smile on her face. Tsuyu croaks in agreement. He and Eri are absolutely adorable. Mina goes on, grin only getting wider, as she watches Midoriya hand Eri a bag of apples. Speaking of which, did you find those photos I asked for? Yaoyorozu pipes up, a sly smile on her normally composed face. Mina nods enthusiastically, and Hagakure bounces up and down with excitement. You mean those ones? Uh-huh. I can't believe she got them either. Usually they're such light sleepers. She whispers dramatically, tapping her phone at lightning speeds. Yaoyorozu leans over, along with the Hagakure and Uraraka, who's curious about what they're talking about. Shinsu and Tokoyami, who have been listening to the conversation on the sidelines, exchange confused looks. Ah, Uraraka squeals, catching the attention of others around her. It's remarkably clear. Yaoyorozu compliments with a big smile, eyes twinkling as she looks at Mina's phone. Tokeni, you have me to thank for that. I'm a master photographer. Hagakure boasts cheerfully. She really is. Mina agrees, a more serious expression on her face. Honestly, I wouldn't have gotten half of these if not for her help. What are you talking about? Shinsu asks, unease curling in his gut, as all 5 girls turn to him in sync, sly smiles on their faces. Well, we could tell you, but only if you promise to help us, Hagakure says, Boots walking towards Shinsu, who feels more uneasy by the second. Oh, well, I guess. Perfect, Mina squeals, and what Shinsu assumes is Hagakure tugs at his arm, hauling him into the small circle of girls. From behind him, he hears Tokoyami mutter something about another one lost to the darkness. What have I gotten myself into? Notes. Honestly, Izuku, if anyone needs therapy, it's you. Not that you'll get it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day night. Chapter 32. A little planning will go a long way. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. As you all know, UA's annual Villain Day is coming up. The majority of the prior week will have guest speakers on topics such as villain psychology and reasoning. Then on the last day, there will be a free-for-all fight within each year, in which you present yourselves as the villain you create and write about. You'll be spending the next 2 weeks writing about your villain persona. Come up with a backstory, fighting style, motivations, and a costume. Feel free to get creative. Sensei, Mina raises her hand, grinning from ear to ear. Yes, Ashido. How will we create our villain costumes? I saw other kids that had them last year, but nobody ever said where they came from. Fill out a form and send it to one of the costume companies that help out UA, or go to our costume department. The form will be faster than direct contact since they have more people to work on your costume, but companies may take liberties that could be prevented if you went without costume department. Please remember to stick to your story, though. We'll be posting them on UA's public website as part of the event. Sensei, Kaminari practically jumps out of his seat to get Aizawa's attention. Yes, Kaminari? Is it true we get a whole week off of school with no makeup work and a monetary prize if we win? Izuku pauses, attention piqued at Kaminari's question. Iyo. Yes. The monetary prize changes each year, but the 1 week off of school is a prize. So, a week off of school, no questions asked, and money to buy a burner phone. He twitches. I could contact the league, maybe even meet up with them. But he's seen Villain Day before. It's basically a free-for-all between the heroics courses of each year, and extremely difficult to win. Fighting against 40 different kids with drastically different quirks and a lot of pent-up aggression, it's going to be difficult. He's going to need a plan. Thankfully, he's always been good at planning. I'm going to win Villain Day, and I'm going to go home. In front of Izuku, Bakugo grins, his own plan forming in his head. Underscore, 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 underscore. Hello, I'm looking for Mei Hatsum. He looks at Powerloader, who tenses as soon as he utters the girl's name. I heard someone say my name. Call the devil and she shall appear. One of the people working beside the doorway mutters, which Izuku does his best to pretend he didn't hear. Oh, it's Mr. 10 Million. Did you come back for my wonderful babies? She grins up at him, right in his personal space. It's uncomfortable, but he's not going to be rude, since she's the only mechanic he knows. Plus, he's pretty sure her morality is flexible at best. Yes, could we talk in private? Underscore, 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 underscore. There are practically stars in her eyes by the time he's done requesting the things he'll need. And in exchange, I'll show everything off at Villain Day. Publicity for you, support items for me. What do you think? Yes, absolutely, she grins, looking like she just shotgunned 10 energy drinks at once. He grins back, and they finalize the plans before he leaves. He'd left Eri with Hitoshi, and he didn't want to keep her waiting too long. Underscore, 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 underscore. His next field trip is to the costume department, on the other side of the school from the support department, despite being in part of it. It's the only class in UA not taught by a pro, and as Izuku walks there, Eri in his arms, he thinks about how to go about this. He doesn't have any acquaintances in the costume department, and he's not sure they'll have enough time to cater to his request. Still, he has to try. After all, his plan relies on shock value, a lot. Eventually, he reaches the door. He stares at it for a minute, somewhat intimidated by the logo and huge door frame before steeling himself. For the League. Izuku puts on his best smile and opens the door. Ikara. Late afternoon sunlight streams in on large tables covered in fabrics, scissors, energy drinks, what Izuku assumes are sewing machines, and general clutter. There are several students in subtlety-altered UA uniforms and aprons working quietly, and a few look up when he walks in. He internally shrivels up and dies at the attention, but his smile is fixed on his face as he surveys the room, looking for someone who looks like a teacher. His eyes land on a person sitting at an extremely large table. They have translucent hair, reminiscent of jellyfish tendrils, and heavily lined yellow eyes without pupils. He walks over to them, quietly patting down the space between the desks. Said person looks up when he walks up to the desk, a neutral look on their face. Hello, are you the head of the costume department? They nod, closing a book and giving him a once-over. You're a first year from the hero course, they state, a flicker of distaste in their eyes. He resists the urge to run out of the room, clutching Ari a little tighter. I am. I was wondering if anyone was available to make me a costume for Villain Day. Be polite but blunt. Don't dance around the issue. If they don't like me, then I can figure something else out. Though his options would be more limited if he didn't have the proper clothing for this. Well, look at that. There's a hero in training that has manners. Someone behind him scoffs, and he represses a flinch. He can feel the general animosity coming from around the room, and it's starting to remind him of middle school. I'm the only person available. Will that be an issue? A person says, approaching them from the left. He turns around and surveys them. They have sickly pale, almost bluish skin, seemingly held together by lines bright red thread that weaves in and out of their skin, covering their arms and stitching their right eye closed. They have short, messy black hair with white streaks in it, and the bangs partially hide their pale gray eyes. They look defensive, upset even. It kind of reminds him of Hitoshi when they first fought at the sports festival. No, it won't be an issue. I want something pretty simple. So as long as you don't mind doing something you've probably done before, I'd be happy for your help. They blink, defensiveness shifting into wariness. He knows the feeling, but having someone from the group who insulted you be sympathetic felt more like a slap on the face than actual sympathy. So he won't do that. Being polite is the best option here, since everyone in the room seems to dislike the heroics course. He won't give them a reason to kick him out. Not, fine, tell me what you want and I'll tell you if I can make it by Villain Day. He nods and pulls out his notebook, shifting Ari to his left arm and flipping to the page he wants. I'd like a white dress shirt made of Kevlar, black cargo-style pants made of Kevlar as well, and a thigh-length trench coat with red lining and loops here. He holds out the notebook to the person, using his thumb to point out his rudimentary sketch. And here. Also, if you have knee-high boots somewhere, I'd appreciate you reinforcing them. If I have color choice for them, I'd like them to be red, but I don't mind if they're not red either. And yeah, that's it. The room is quiet for a minute, and he shifts uncomfortably. Did I get any terminology wrong? No, you did fine. Why Kevlar, though? It's pretty stiff and hard to move in, they ask, taking his notebook out of his hand and peering at his sketches. I just want really sturdy fabric, like could withstand a punch from All Might Tough. If that exists, he says, smiling awkwardly. I could make a blend between Kevlar and something more pliable. The teacher pipes up, making him jump. The student just nods in acknowledgement, still looking over his sketches. Could you translate the notes around the drawings for me and try to make the drawings less scratchy? They ask and he nods. Yeah, sorry about that. It's been getting colder and it's harder for me to draw. They frown, but hand the notebook back to him. Right. If I have Kumo-sensei's help with the materials, I should be able to finish this before Villain Day. Sensei? They turn to the teacher, now dubbed Kumo-sensei, who nods, long pink nails tapping the desk lightly. Only if you feel like working with him, though. I don't want a repeat of that electric one. Electric. Kaminari? Could his classmate have been the one to offend them? But why? Heroes relied on costume designers to the point of that. If a costume designer were to hold a grudge against the hero, they could easily make a fatal mistake in the costume and get the hero killed. Only an idiot would offend them. I'm Kin Yanagi, they say, hand outstretched for him. He takes it with a smile. It's nice to work with you, Yanagi. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Underscore, 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 underscore. It takes an hour to draw and write everything to Yanagi's satisfaction, but once he does, they look over everything again and start adding their own notes over it. While they do that, he pulls a bag of apples out of his pocket and hands it to Eri, who looks delighted by the snack after an hour of boredom. Sorry this is taking so long, honey. I promise to make it up to you, okay? She nods, taking the bag from his hands with a tiny smile that makes his chest warm with something. He smiles, then turns back to Yanagi, who's watching them with an unreadable expression. Is something wrong? They blink, and he notices their red stitches glinting faintly under the sunlight. How interesting. Could it be a part of their quirk? I need to get your measurements so I know what I'm working with, they say, expression blank as pale gray eyes survey Izuku. Okay, he agrees and waits. That means take off your clothes. Izuku blinks, surprised by their blunt words. Okay, sure. Man, this is awkward. There are several other people here, and he kind of wishes there were a curtain or something, but he'll take what he gets. He's lucky they're choosing to work with him. He unbuttons his shirt, then pulls off his compression shirt, folding them and neatly placing them on the only clear space at the table. Then he pulls off his shoes and pants, setting them to the side and trying not to show how uncomfortable he is with this step. They don't react to this, thankfully. He holds still as they pull measuring tape out of their maroon apron and walk towards him. They start measuring his shoulders and arms first, occasionally writing down something in their own notebook. He spends the next 20 minutes being measured and moving at Yanagi's command. Once they tell him they're done, Izuku lets out a quiet sigh of relief, quickly putting his uniform back on. His only consolation is that he didn't see any cameras in this classroom when he came in. Nezu must not be interested in the costume department goings-on for whatever reason. Izuku? Mm-hmm. He hums, turning to her. She holds out the now empty plastic bag for him. I'm done. Okay. Do you want wipes for your hands? Yes, please. He hands her a wipe and takes the bag, tucking it into his pocket. Once she's done, he tucks it into his pocket too, having not seen a trash can anywhere. All right, I've got everything I need for today. Come back a week from now and we'll talk fabrics. Got it? Izuku jumps at their voice but nods and scoops Eri up, sensing that he's just been dismissed. Yes, thank you for your time. He leaves the costume department quickly, noting down the day he needs to come back and talk about fabrics with Yanagi. Notes. I like making OCs with quirks that alter their appearances. Have a good day night. Chapter 33. Mistakes were made. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. It's Sunday. He and Eri have been spending more time inside because of the weather, but today is warmer than most, so he gives Eri a jacket and they go on a walk. Todoroki joins them, silently trailing behind them with a thin jacket and shorts. After a few minutes of walking a little ahead of Todoroki, she turns around and walks over to Todoroki, who stops and looks down at her with confusion. She holds her hand out to him, little fingers stretching up. Do you want to hold my hand? The red and white-haired boy's expression morphs into surprise, and Izuku grins, his chest warming at the adorableness. Todoroki hesitates for a minute, but nods and places his hand in Eri's. She smiles and turns around, pulling him forwards and taking Izuku's hand. He smiles, allowing Eri to pull them down the paved path. Beside him, Todoroki wears his "I'm panicking, but I'm trying to stay calm" expression, which makes Izuku giggle. The little girl holding his hand pulls him forwards, and the sun shines down on him, warming his aching hands. And all he can think of is how grateful Eri came into his life when she did. She made everything brighter, muted the crawling feeling of cameras monitoring him all the time, and of his sense of impending doom. She gives him hope, and that's all he's ever needed. Underscore, 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 underscore. Today we'll be taking a trip to the USJ to train with the rescue heroes, the Wild Wild Pussycats. The room's collective mood takes a dive, and even the students who are regularly chatterboxes go silent. Aizawa notices their discomfort and sighs. The USJ's security features have been upgraded since the attack, and we've included devices that will send a message to the school as soon as the signal stops or the device is destroyed. The unease doesn't die down at that, and it continues to hang in the air, even as they change into their costumes and get in line to board the bus. Eri notices it and sends Izuku a questioning look, but he's too busy fighting a sense of guilt in his gut. He'd, well, not forgotten about the start of the year attack, but he'd moved past it. He doesn't really think of Shigaraki in that context anymore. Not when he knows that the man role-plays as a girl online to catfish old men, and that Kurogiri freaks out over his kitchen utensils being chipped or cracked. The other league members did some bad stuff too, but he didn't really think of them badly because of it. He knows what they do for a job, but that's what it is. A job. It's not their personality or life mission to be the greatest evil the world's ever seen. They're just people. But his classmates are people too. Not always kind or mindful ones, but people nonetheless. He can't help feeling some guilt that someone he was close with had scared them so badly. Then again, he doesn't think the attack was Shigaraki's idea in the first place. If he had to guess, it was the mysterious sensei's idea. They held a clear grudge against the hero system as a whole, and judging from Shigaraki's opinions, which he suspected were built off of his masters, they didn't like All Might all that much. Izuku couldn't really blame them, though. The day All Might was given One for All was the day he fell victim to his hero complex, and it's been controlling his life ever since. He sighs, holding Eri a little tighter as he settled into a seat in the corner of the bus. The bus ride is silent, tension building the longer they sit there. Once the bus slows to a stop, the mood turns somber and grim as they file out of the bus and into the platform of the USJ. A sense of familiarity washes over him when he sees 13 waiting for them. Behind them are a group of brightly dressed, cat-themed people with smiles on their faces. And behind them, Izuku spots a tuft of spiky black hair poking out from under a red hat, with yellow horns peeking out of it. A kid? The wild pussycats spring into action, making a couple of people jump. But after a few minutes of enthusiastic cheering and chatter, the atmosphere eases. Their teachers split them up into random groups, and they're each guided down the stairs towards their respective disaster zones. He's in a group with Malade, a woman with a broadcasting quirk and red-themed outfit. She's stern, but seems genuinely excited to teach them. Behind her, the kid with the red hat lurks, scowling at everyone and everything. It kind of reminds Izuku of Bakugo, actually. Younger him was a lot nicer in general. He trails behind his classmates, allowing Eri to take in the view as they walk towards the flood zone. Shuji, Yaoyorozu, and Tokoyami are in front of him, and his eye twitches when he hears snippets of Yaoyorozu and Malade's conversation. I just don't know what to do in this zone. Is there a way for me to be reassigned or maybe sit this out? I'm sorry, dear, but you do need to participate. If you really want to sit this one out, then you'll have to talk about it with Eraserhead. Oh, well, I don't think he'd, well, she sounds nervous and eventually just goes quiet. I don't know what to do, my ass. Yaoyorozu, he calls, voice flat as he stops. The rest of the group pauses, a faint chill going down their spines at how emotionless the green-haired boy sounds. Eri shifts in his arms, recognizing his tone from when he talked to the two men that came to ask her questions. The black-haired girl turns around, an uneasy expression on her face when she meets Izuku's green eyes. Yes, Midoriya. He lets out a half huff, half sigh, and shakes his head. You do realize you're basically God, right? Everyone pauses, processing his words and the absolute exasperation in his voice. I keep on hearing you talking about how limited your quirk is, and honestly, I'm sick of it. You're basically God, and from what you've said, you've worked hard to make your quirk usable. Memorizing complex chemistry and learning about atoms in second grade is not normal, which means you also have the brains to make your quirk work. And I mean, sure, you can't create organic material, but theoretically, you could create something that could create organic material. Also, you do realize you could just learn how to create a gun and tranquilizer and easily dominate the hero rankings, right? As long as you put in the work to learn how to use it, of course. On top of that, you could also create stun grenades, flash grenades, or straight-up bombs if you wanted to. You're limiting yourself to bow staffs and shields, But if you would just go to the support department or even play some video games and take inspiration from them, you'd have an even wider range of weapons at your disposal. As for not knowing what to do in the flood zone, why don't you create some inflatable rafts and use them to evacuate citizens safely? The group stares at him, and he huffs, adjusting Airy so he can reach his notebook. Honestly, I have no idea how someone with a guaranteed spot in the top 10 for the rest of their life can feel so insecure. He carefully tears a page out of it and tucks the notebook away again. Here, everyone blinks in unison, their eyes focusing on the paper in his hands. Yaoyorozu, slightly pink from the blunt praise Izuku gave her, steps forwards and accepts the piece of paper, looking confused. What is this? A list of TV shows and movies for you to watch for inspiration. Also a contact in the support department. She's a little unhinged, but she's good with machines. The black-haired girl blinks, then looks down at the list, reading it over before nodding. You have a point. Thank you, Midoriya. I'll be going over this list tonight. He hums noncommittally, shrugging. With that rant off of his chest, he walks towards the flood zone, leaving his classmates and the hero to follow behind him. Underscore, 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 underscore. The flood zone leaves him soaked and shivering, but when he comes back, he sees Eri talking with the boy from before, whose scowl has lessened. He towels off quickly, clipping his bangs out of his face and removing his mouthguard before meandering over to the pair. Damn. And sometimes he'll make me apples with chocolate or caramel. It's so yummy. She smiles her tiny smile, and Izuku smiles with her, chest warm. Is he your dad or something? The green-haired boy chokes on his spit, throwing himself backwards and into Shuji, who catches him with three of his arms and shoots him a confused look as he doubles over, violently coughing. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? Noted that I'm iron time too young to beat it seriously. What the fuck? What's a dad? Izuku's face is flushed bright red and throws his hands over his head, praying that the other kid won't say something dumb or suggesting that he's a dad before he even turned 20. It's someone who takes care of you and brings you nice stuff, plus tell you goodnight stories and help you whenever you have nightmares. No, please, Seika. Indothism no tadadami? Oh, then I guess he is my dad. He lets out a wail that sounds like something dying a horrible death and passes out right outside of the flood zone, in full view of his classmates and hero teacher. Chapter 34. Take that into consideration. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. How's everything going? He asks, watching Hatsune work on a giant robot that the rest of the class seemed to be doing as well. She seems pretty bored with it, though. Powerloader must have restricted her to doing the actual class project again. After the incident at the USJ, which he has been repressing for days because he doesn't want to deal with that can of worms, Eri had been quieter than usual, although she kept her hand tight around Izuku's at all times. Today he'd had to leave her at the dorms because nothing in the support course classroom could be trusted to not explode with Hatsune there, which had made her sad. He'd promised her that they'd cook together when he got back, though, which seemed to cheer her up a little bit, but she still had a forlorn look in her eyes when she said goodbye to him. It's going great. I'm working on the rings right now. Finding the right material for them was hard, but then this girl with a ponytail came in and offered to supply me with material if I teach her about my babies. So of course I said yes, and she looked really happy. And she gave me so much good material I can't wait to make babies with. And I think I might be in love. Is this what love feels like? Oh, who knows, but I'm getting her in on Hatsune Industries before we graduate. She'll make a great addition to my business. So she met Yaoyorozu. He smiles, leaning over the greasy desk to peer into the guts of the robot she's working on. Yeah, I recommended she came here to train her quirk. I'm glad you two got along. Hatsune beams at him, teeth perfectly white despite the soot covering her face. And for the other babies you requested, the gloves are done. They're pretty and functional, but I have no idea why you'd only want 2 fingers covered. Anyway, I'm also almost done with the main one, but man, modifying it from those weird blueprints was annoying. Other than that, I had a good time figuring out how it worked. Where'd you get those blueprints from, anyway? Ah, it was a screenshot from an old pre-Quirk show. Sorry about the quality. Hatsum nods and grins, practically vibrating in place as she leans into the robot with a pair of what look like industrial tweezers and messing with it. A shower of sparks bathe her arms, but she doesn't flinch back, just shoving her head further into the robot. When she starts muttering about power loader limiting her creative freedom, he takes it as his cue to leave. He doesn't want to be in the way of an angry Hatsum. That sounds more terrifying than being used as a test subject for her experimental babies. Honestly, Izuku feels bad for the hero. He has no idea what's coming for him. Underscore, 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 underscore. Izuku stretches and yawns, flopping back onto the floor like a limp noodle before getting to his feet. He needs to meet with Yanagi again today, and he'll need to get there right after class. The rest of the day is spent breezing through his classes, with Eri drawing right beside him. He's been teaching her to read recently, and she seems to enjoy it. Yesterday, she even got through an entire storybook by herself. His lips twitch at the memory of her surprised joy as he packs up for the day. His classmates are quickly filing out of the classroom, but he's taking his time, thinking about his last visit to the costume department. Eri, I'm going to go back to that place with a lot of windows. It's probably going to be pretty boring, though. So if you want, I can drop you off with Hitoshi or Todoroki. I'm sure they'd be happy to watch a movie with you while I'm gone. She blinks, big red eyes peering up at him, in a look Izuku can only describe as puppy dog eyes. His chest seizes up, and his heart melts as she pouts. I want to go with you. Are you sure? It's going to be boring. He drags the word out with a playful smile. Yeah, I like boring. He chuckles, but puts on his backpack and offers her his hand. She takes it, a slightly relieved look in her eye as they leave the empty classroom and walk down the somewhat busy hallways to the costume department. Where underscore, 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 underscore. They seem less hostile than last time. Most of the students don't acknowledge him, but he doesn't mind heading straight for Yanagi's desk. They're bent over a whirring machine, and there's a male mannequin behind them draped in what Izuku assumes is the beginnings of his costume. Behind, he smiles faintly at the sight and squeezes Eri's hand, pointing to it. She looks over to it and blinks, then smiles up at him. The machine abruptly stops, and Yanagi looks up, revealing a pair of circular glasses resting on the tip of their nose. Hello, Yanagi. Midoriya, you're here to talk about the fabric. He nods. Right. Well, the suit is on the mannequin. I'll grab Kumo-sensei from the teacher's lounge. Don't touch anything. He nods again, and Yanagi gets up, stretches luxuriously, and walks out, leaving him in the quiet room with Eri. Oh well, they'll come back, eventually, he hopes. Damn it, Kaminari. Why'd you have to go and offend the resident costume designers? Underscore, 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 underscore. So you said you wanted tough fabric. I don't think I confuse anything as tough as you're thinking with the materials we have on hand, but I can see what's lying around, Kumo-sensei says, hair drifting upwards, as if gravity has no effect on it. Fuse, their quirk maybe. Then is their hair a residual mutation? Or does it help with fusing? Izuku blinks, then nods, glancing down at Eri, who's peeking out at the two people in front of them with curiosity. If it's a material issue, he trails off when the force of two stares fix on him. I have a classmate who can make anything inorganic, so just tell me what you need to make the fabric as durable and flexible as possible, and I'll get it from her. If that's the case, then the material you're looking for will need a non-brittle metal that can withstand, say, you have an explosion quirk in the first-year course, right? Do you know how hot it gets? Around 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit on average, but can top out at around 5,450 Fahrenheit if pushed. But I'm more worried about the force that's generated from his bigger blasts. On top of that, I have a classmate with an acid quirk, which will be difficult to combat. I'd need, maybe? Yeah, that would. He descends into a muttering storm, pulling out his notebook and phone and scribbling down ideas. It's only when Eri tugs on his pant leg that he snaps out of it, blinking and abruptly cutting off his speech to look down at her. She points to the other two, who look slightly overwhelmed by his stream of words. Um, sorry. So if I were to get some graphene, and you were to use a tiny bit of spandex, then mix it with some sort of fireproof material and a normal fabric to balance it all out, that could work. That is, if your quirk is fusing materials together without limitations. If you have any sort of material you can't work with, I can think of something else, but he offers, turning to Kumo-sensei as he speaks. They blink using a secondary eyelid, which is so cool, but he stops himself from talking more, and tap their long fingernails on the surface of the work table. Yes, that could work. How did you figure out my quirk? Lucky guess. He gives him a lopsided smile and tucks his notebook away, dialing Yaoyorozu's number. So how much do you need and when do you need it? Kumo-sensei taps the table again, fingernails making a rhythmic sound on the metal surface as they think. Beside them is Yanagi, who looks surprised by their conversation. Well, I'll need an hour for each material, and combining them all together, it'll probably take around 4 hours. Give or take 30 minutes if you want different colors. So get them to me within the next 2 days, and I should be able to make it in time for Yanagi here to actually use them, they say, shooting a fond smile towards their student. Said student flushes slightly, taking off their glasses and cleaning them on their apron to avoid eye contact. You got it. What are convenient hours for you? Any time within the school day and an hour after it ends, they say, hair catching a bit of afternoon sunlight and glowing. He physically stops himself from busting into a stream of questions about her quirk, because this is a teacher, and teachers don't like questions. Also, I found boots you could use and change them to red, but I can't do much to anything proof them, Yanagi says, voice professional, despite the apologetic words. Ah, I should have seen this coming. What could he do? He doesn't have any sort of fireproof material or sealant, and asking for more than one thing feels like he's taking advantage of Yaoyorozu. Oh, I can take them to Hatsum. She'll have the stuff I need. She uses it on her clothes all the time since she used to walk around on fire and freak people out. He trails off with a triumphant grin. Right. If you don't mind, I'll take the shoes for now and get them everything proofed. And if you need them, I can come back and give them to you. They nod in agreement, red thread on their arms glinting in the golden sunlight. Izuku leaves the costume department with a pair of knee-high red boots, a phone number, and a grin on his face. Underscore, 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 underscore. Hey Deku, did you finish that essay for Villain Day yet? Uraraka asked, leaning against the doorframe and watching Izuku cook with Eri on his hip. In the common room, Hakaguri and Mina lean close together, wide grins on their faces as they scroll through Mina's phone, where they keep the evidence of their crimes. Oh my God, did you see him and Eri baking with Sadu? The poor boy looked like he was going to keel over when Eri asked him to add more cinnamon with her puppy dog eyes. I know, but did you see Midori catch Eri when she nearly tripped over the sidewalk the other day? He was fussing over her, just like a dad. Oh my God, no, show me. Honestly, my daddy issues can't take much more of this. Giroux groans, leaning back on the couch and hiding her eyes from the contents of Mina's phone. Yaoyorozu smiles, silently agreeing with Mina's comment about Midoriya's dadness. Anyone who'd witnessed the past couple of weeks would know that Izuku Midoriya undoubtedly makes a good father figure. He'd almost completely come out of his shell of silence for that little girl, and everyone was relieved to have their resident sunshine boy back, even if he's a little quieter than before. Yeah, I did. Why? Izuku asks, carefully setting the lid to the broth onto the pot and turning to Uraraka. I was wondering if you could help Iida, Todoroki, and I with ours. We're having a bit of trouble, and it's due in pretty soon, you know. She rubs the back of her neck awkwardly as Izuku carefully keeps Eri away from the hot stove as she wiggles to look at Uraraka. Well, I'd like to get Eri to bed early tonight, but if you all want to bring your work in here, I wouldn't mind helping out. Yes, she cheers, pumping her fist in victory before dashing off to get her other friends. He turns back to the food, lifting the lid off of the noodles and giving them an experimental poke. 15 more minutes. Izuku. Eri's voice is quiet, hesitant, but he hears and immediately his focus is on her. Yes, honey? Where is your family? She's the most curious about this. He talks about his family sometimes, but he said he wasn't talking about his classmates, and she never saw his family at UA. Izuku pauses and she tenses. You, you said the drawings on your arm are for them, right? Where are they? Are they gone? Did they get hurt? With each word, she shrinks in on herself and becomes quieter, looking up at him nervously. He gives her a gentle smile, softly squeezing her leg to comfort her, but his eyes are a million miles away. I'm not sure. I can't go visit them right now, but someday I'll see them again. That's why I have my drawing. It reminds me that they're waiting for me. He shifts, adjusting his grip on her. Eri looks thoughtful, but before she can ask anything else, Ida, Todoroki, and Uraraka appear in the kitchen doorway, looking relieved. Thank you for offering to help, Midoriya. We are extremely grateful for your generosity. He waves his arms around vigorously. Todoroki hums in agreement, and Izuku smiles when Eri twists in his arms to give Todoroki a smile, which he returns. Everyone files into the kitchen, computers on hand, and grim look in their eyes that spoke of students having put off an assignment too long and knowing that they were doomed. So, what were you guys having trouble with? He asks, opening the industrial fridge and grabbing soy sauce. The backstory is my main concern, although I cannot speak for my fellow students. Actually, that was the part I having an issue with too. I've been researching famous villains' backstories, but none of them fit, you know? Uraraka says, an awkward smile on her face. I agree. I need a backstory as well. Todoroki nods. Izuku frowns, tilting his head and adjusting his hold on Eri again. Couldn't you guys just use your own lives? Upon being met with confused stares, he decides to elaborate. Villains become villains for various reasons. The best way to think about this assignment is to think of what you would do to achieve your goals. Would you kill someone? Would you crush someone else's dreams in favor of your own? Every villain has their own morals, beliefs, and desires. They're human, just like us. My point is that anyone could be considered a villain or a hero from a different perspective. So take your life, think about the negatives, and write what might have happened if you'd become bitter about your hardships and decided to lash out at others instead of persevering. The kitchen is silent, and the common room is quiet as well, his speech having carried over to the other room. Something in Todoroki's eyes gleams, and Ida looks shocked. Uraraka is silent, but the gears in her head are visibly turning. Yeah, I think Midori is right. Villains are people too, even if it's kind of hard to believe. Mina calls from the couch and Hakagura nods, even though no one can see her. He frowns slightly because what about that is hard to believe. But he's distracted from his thoughts by the invisible girl. Man, I kind of want to redo my assignment now. Who knew you were so good at teaching? Hakagura bounces over to the doorway, light yellow t-shirt glowing underneath the bright lights. Izuku flushes, awkwardly clearing his throat and turning back to the stove. I promise I'm not. I'm just trying to help Uraraka and Todoroki and Ida. Don't ask me to teach a class or anything. Talking in front of others is my greatest weakness. Yeah, right, she giggles. The other three seem to collect themselves, but Ida still looks confused and raises his hand out of habit. Izuku spots this and holds back laughter at how stiff his classmate is. Yes, Ida? I am still confused. I do not think it is possible for me to use my own life as a backstory since I was raised by a legacy of great heroes. There's a note of pride that seeps through his tone at his own admission. Does he seriously think all villains weren't raised right? Izuku raises an eyebrow, his deadpan stare on par with Aizawa's. Villains aren't always raised by villains. Some are raised by heroes. Some are raised by good people. He pauses, letting it sink in before continuing. But if you're still confused, let me give you an example. Oftentimes, villains will have a breaking point. It's a point in their life where they're at their lowest, when no one is extending a hand to help, and they're frustrated with something in or out of their control. If you were to base your backstory off of your own life, You could use Stain's attack on your brother as your breaking point. If you successfully killed Stain and UA decided to abandon you, that would have put you on the watch list of the commission at the very least, even with your family status. From there, you would have been shunned and denied your legacy of becoming a hero. All because you let your anger blind you once. And once it got to be too much, you might have thought, well, what's one more crime? That would have taken you down a rabbit hole, and you would have become a villain, regardless of your family standing. Ieda looks pale but nods and puts down his hand, looking chastised. Hakagura is sitting on a clean, isolated part of the counter, and Mina has crept into the doorway. Uraraka raises her hand next, a small frown on her face. Uraraka. The brown-haired girl sets her hand down. I, don't think I have a breaking point. At least nothing like Ida's. She looks sheepish, but Izuku just smiles. I said villains often have a breaking point. Not always. Sometimes it's the small buildup of things that can set a person off. Oh, like when you have a bad day and then you get home and try to make yourself a snack, but drop a spoon and start crying? Mina asks, hand raised with a mischievous smile on her face. Unaware of his classmates teasing him, Izuku nods. That's a smaller scale version of what I'm talking about. Uraraka? Yes, she squeaks, surprised by the sudden attention towards herself. You told me you wanted to be a hero to earn money for your family. What if your parents couldn't wait for the money and you didn't qualify for any hero schools? Would you have tried to get a different job? But you didn't qualify for anything that could really help? You probably would have felt frustrated, maybe even angry, right? Probably, Uraraka says, looking thoughtful. What if you'd turned to robbing businesses or orchestrating robberies? You could have gotten wrapped up in a larger scale operation to make money, but you would be able to help your parents. If you were desperate, then that would have seemed like a good option, and that's how you would have become a villain. At least in the government's eyes. As for you, Todoroki, I suggest using fragments of your life if the idea of sharing everything with the internet isn't something you're comfortable with. However, if you want a starting point to your villainy, it could be when you kill your father and run away. There are several gasps at that, and Iida stands up to reprimand him, but Todoroki just smiles slightly and starts typing, making everyone stop. Izuku smiles too, then opens the bottle of soy sauce and pours some into his pan, careful to keep Eri out of the way of the hot pan. She's been quiet this entire time, but her red eyes flicked to everyone as they spoke, curiosity in her gaze. Midoriya? Yayorozu is in the doorway now, looking hesitant. Yes? Could you help myself and a couple classmates with our backstories as well? You seem to have the head for it, and a lot of us have been struggling. Izuku peers at his dish, then gives Yayorozu an apologetic look. I'm sorry, but I want to get Eri to bed early tonight. Wait, I can go grab everyone have trouble with their essays for you, and we can do it while you cook, Hakagura says, sounding excited. I don't think I'm that helpful. Please, Midori. Everyone would really appreciate the help, and we'll all owe you a favor, Mina chimes in, looking excited at the prospect. The green-haired boy looks in between the three girls and sighs, knowing he's outnumbered. Okay, just get them quickly. Dinner will be done in 45 minutes or so. Underscore, 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 underscore. There are 9 people in the kitchen now, excluding Eri and Izuku. The original 3 are perched on the far side of the kitchen, typing away, and the other 6 are watching him, computers on hand. Thanks for volunteering to help us, man. I know you have a lot on your plate, Kirishima says. Beside him, Kaminari wears a skeptical look, but he stays because Mina is a reliable source of information for anything non-school related. Hakagure is on a countertop, along with Jiru and Yayorozu, who sit on the stools on the island so close that their arms are touching. Is this everyone? Izuku asks, looking at Mina and Yayorozu. Yup, I believe so. Great, let's get started. Ashido? Yes, sensei? Izuku doesn't even react to her calling him a teacher, his one-track mind currently focused on helping his classmates. Have you ever been treated differently or bullied for your appearance? Her expression falls a little, but she nods. Kirishima looks surprised by this and quickly turns to face her. Seriously, I never saw anyone bully you. I thought you were the person who stood up to the bullies, he exclaims. I wasn't all the time or anything, just a couple of mean looks and gossip. But I didn't like it that much. That's why I stood up to those bullies. I didn't want anyone to feel like I did. I didn't want anyone to feel like I did. He smiles faintly and looks over at Eri, who's watching Mina and Kirishima talk with wide red eyes. Gently, he squeezes her ankle, then gets his classmates' attention. Have you heard of the villain Disamina? Mina shakes her head, looking curious. She was a person with a mutant quirk that made her look similar to an octopus and was constantly discriminated against and mistreated by her peers and people in positions of authority. When she was 27, she decided she'd had enough of everything and went on a rampage that indirectly killed over 50 people. She retreated into the sea when heroes tried to capture her, and it took another 5 years to find her and arrest her. When she was arrested, she was sent to prison indefinitely and was refused a trial. That's unfair, Hakagura exclaims, sounding indignant. But that's what happened, and today she's used as one of the leading examples of anti-mutant quirk arguments that say those with mutant quirks are devolved. There's mixed reactions to that, but surprise is the leading one, probably because most of the people in the kitchen have had powerful quirks their entire lives and faced little to no discrimination. So Ishido, I suggest you model your backstory after hers. But wouldn't people notice that the story is similar? She asked, tapping her chin with a black painted fingernail. Of course, but every person with a mutant quirk has faced discrimination at some point, so it would actually sound similar to a lot of people's stories. Izuku shrugs and leaves Mina to think about that. Right. Who's next? Underscore, 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 underscore. The night ended with all 9 of his classmates finishing their assignments over dinner. They talked over their backstories and reviewed them with Yaoyorozu and Izuku for some reason, and they all thanked him profusely for helping them. He smiles and nods, but retreats to his room quickly, feeling overwhelmed by all of the attention and chatter. Thankfully, Eri seems to feel okay, and he gets her to sleep pretty easily, though he has to sacrifice a hand to do it. But that's okay. He shifts and adjusts himself so that his hand rests on the edge of the bed, then turns off the lights and lays back. Everything is in place. All I need to do is wait, and I'll be ready for Villain Day. He smiles at the thought of being able to hear everyone's voices, fingers tracing the lines of his tattoo as the moonlight filters through his curtains. Notes. Asterisk insert Izuku educating his classmates. BC, they're idiots. Asterisk, asterisk, insert Izuku going into teacher mode and also being a complete idiot asterisk, though he has to sacrifice a hand to do it. But that's okay. Chapter 35, Opportunities will present themselves. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. With a goal to work towards and the promise of some form of communication with the League in the near future, he becomes more cheerful, and he barely feels the invisible collar around his neck most days. Nezu still hasn't found the papers for Eri, and All Might hasn't tried to contact him outside of class. And everything feels, well, not good, but as good as things can get. He almost forgets his classmates' worldviews until he's violently jarred out of his good mood one afternoon. He's sitting in his chair, Eri on his lap as Midnight talks about pre-Quirk era comics, one of her favorite topics since she thought older paintings felt stuffy, and someone called Superman, who sounded an awful lot like All Might minus his backstory. As Eri draws on a notepad Midnight had given her, he overhears part of the conversation behind him. No, I hate it when Sensei erases our quirks. I feel so powerless and empty without it. Yeah, I wish he'd stop doing that. Do you think that's how quirkless people feel? Probably. Man, that must suck. He freezes on instinct, the world around him blurring as he recognizes the voices. Kaminari, Mina, and Kirishima. He'd helped them with their homework, talked to them about discrimination and bullying, even laughed at their jokes. Would they have done that if he was quirkless? No, his brain whispers. He tries to shake himself out of it, but he can't quite move, his limbs heavy and useless. Thoughts spiral into one another, becoming jumbled and tangled. Until Izuku. Izuku snaps to attention at the nervous note in Eri's voice as she stares up at him with worried eyes. Hey, is something wrong? He asks, smiling gently. Are you okay? You looked really sad. I'm okay, honey. She looks doubtful, but doesn't question him, and turns back to her drawing. After a minute, she stops and turns back around, holding out her hand. He tilts his head, confused. You hold my hand when I'm sad, and it makes me feel better. Izuku blinks, and then he smiles and puts his hand in hers. Thank you, Eri. She smiles back. The action is still new to her, but after seeing Izuku do it so much, she'd started trying to smile too. Then she turns back to her drawing. She doesn't release his hand, and a warm feeling rests in Izuku's chest as he watches her work. Someday he'll introduce her to the league. He thinks they'll like her. Underscore, 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 Midoriya. Principal Nezu. Izuku dips his head respectfully, then takes a seat in the chair across from the principal, lacing his fingers together to prevent any fidgeting. I've called you to my office today because I found the papers for Eri, he informs the boy, a more serious look on his face. Izuku's heart drops into his stomach, but he does his best not to react to Nezu's words. Could you tell me what you found? The principal shakes his head, taking a sip of his tea. Unfortunately, I could only find the mother. The father was reported dead 3 years ago. When I called her, she told me she'd never had children and promptly blocked my number. However, her maiden name traces back to the original leader of the Yakuza that Overhaul formerly led, who's been inactive for a year and a half. I suspect that he may be dead, but I have no proof. So she has no living family willing to take her in, and Overhaul has no legal right to decide where she may be in the future. The green-haired boy relaxes at that, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. That's good, but that's not all, is it? He says, tilting his head as Principal Nezu smiles at him, baring all of his teeth. Since Eri has no living relatives willing to take her on, by the law of Japan, she needs to be adopted or put into the foster system. His breath catches in his throat, and he freezes, because Nezu is taking Eri away, and he doesn't want to let her go into the system. He'd heard nightmares about quirk trafficking rings that twisted the system to find prime merchandise. And what if Eri? Now, you and I are aware that Eri is more than a little attached to you, and I believe it goes both ways. Nezu leans forwards, tail swishing slightly behind him. So I'd like to propose an idea. Izuku hauls himself out of his spiraling thoughts, clenching his hands tightly together. What is it, and how does it benefit you? The principal grins even wider, tail swishing more vigorously. As far as I read on your file, you're still legally quirkless. Therefore, you're eligible to apply for Section 803 and use your status as an adult to adopt Eri. Of course, if I and one of UA's teachers were to write letters of recommendation, you'd be guaranteed custody. Section 803, it was a newer law that had passed a few years ago, and there'd been a lot of uproar around it, mostly from bigots and the misinformed, because it made anyone medically and legally diagnosed quirkless an adult once they turned 12. Therefore, they could make their own decisions, buy their own things, and separate from their parents once they turned 12. And that's right. Izuku never did list his current quirk status anywhere but the UA entry papers, did he? What's in it for you? Nezu grins. I'd like to see the next holder of One for All flourish and graduate to become one of the greats, of course, and Eri's quirk is of interest to me. He wants my sponsorship and freedom to experiment with Eri's quirk. His crooked hands tighten, knuckles whitening as he resists the urge to glare at the principal of UA. I'll take your offer on one condition. Principal Nezu's grin is fixed on his furry snout. It's the expression of someone who knows they have someone right where they want them, and Izuku despises it. But he'll be calm for Eri's sake. You will not attempt any form of experimentation with her quirk unless she gives her explicit consent without any outside influence. The mammal's grin lessens, but he nods in understanding, leaning back into his chair and reaches under his desk, pulling out a stack of paper. Read through all of this and sign where needed. I also suggest contacting your mother. Does she need to sign any of this? No. then that's a waste of time. Nezu's beady black eyes glimmer with curiosity that Isuku pointedly ignores, already flipping through the papers. Underscore, 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 underscore. He spends the rest of the morning going through the papers and signing where needed. It's lunchtime by the time he finishes, and he quickly leaves Nezu's office with the promise of the papers approved within a week. It's easy to find his next class, but harder to walk in. A week ago, he'd been freaking out over being a teen dad, but he just voluntarily signed adoption papers that give him full responsibility over Aries' life until she's 18. He just didn't want her hurt, and he didn't trust anyone else to treat her properly. Also, he's extremely emotionally attached. Even he can admit that to himself. Plus, handing her off to another person would only break her trust that he'd worked hard to build. I can do this. Being her legal caretaker couldn't be that different from what he's been doing. All he has to do is enroll her in school or find her a tutor, and he'd meet all of the requirements listed on the papers he'd read over. How am I going to tell her, though? And with that thought, he freezes. What if she doesn't want him to be her caretaker? What if she wants to live with a normal family and not on school grounds? What if she wants to leave? He wouldn't blame her, but still, he'd miss her. A lot. The only way to know is to ask her. I can always cancel the papers if she wants to go live with someone else. He squares his shoulders and opens the door to what he assumes is a free period, judging by Aizawa napping in his sleeping bag and the chatter of his classmates. Instantly, he zeroes in on Eri, who's sitting in Todoroki's chair while he sits beside him. She's currently playing with his hair, but she seems to sense his gaze and looks up. He beckons to her, and her expression morphs into a tiny frown as she slips off of the chair and weaves through the desk to him. Eri, we need to talk. Underscore, 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 underscore. Okay, Eri. He kneels down to her eye level, keeping his voice even despite the pounding of his heart in his ears. You have two options, and you don't need to decide today, but I'm going to tell you about them so you can think about it, okay? She nods, looking pensive as she clutches the fabric of her teal skirt. How do I say this? I'm not exactly supposed to be taking care of you. Usually that's for adults, but I'd like to be your official caretaker. Eri tilts her head, looking confused. That means, you'd stay with me until you were an adult. But that's not the only option. You, you can also go into the foster care system and you'll be put with a family. A family with a brother or sister, or maybe even a dog. He stops when he sees Eri's eyes filling with tears, heart clenching at the sight. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. He holds his hands up placatingly. I, I can really stay with you? Forever? She sniffs, looking up at him. The wall of windows beside them illuminates the tear that traces down her face, and he watches the fire of hope that he'd worked hard to build up burn in her eyes as she stares at him. His heart pounds wildly, hands shaking as he smiles gently, ignoring the knot of anxiety in his stomach. If that's what you want. Her eyes glitter with tears as a brilliant smile stretches across her face. She throws herself at him, wrapping her arms around his neck and sobbing into his uniform. He holds her tightly, blinking back tears as he smiles, a sense of relief washing over him. She wants to stay, he notes. You all asked if Izuku was a dad, and you know what I said? Absolutely, let's make it official. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Have a wonderful day night. She wants to stay, he notes. You all asked if Izuku was a dad, and you know what I said? Absolutely, let's make it official. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Have a wonderful day night. Chapter 36. It's officially official. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Midoriya. Izuku. She didn't really know what to think of him at first. He was different. Overhaul had given her to him, told her to take care of him, but instead he took care of her. He didn't know her, but he seemed to know what she wanted before she wanted it. He's kind, but can be harsh. Not to her, never to her. He has more scars than she can count, but he's strong. She didn't understand him or trust him, but he took care of her. He held her gently and always kept his promises, waiting for her with an open hand and warm, understanding green eyes. He taught her to read and to write and what the stars were, and the longer she stayed with him, the safer she felt. She still isn't sure what to think of him. Her curse doesn't work on him, and when he asks her to be her caretaker, she feels a swell of happiness because she'd get to stay with him. He won't cast her aside like everyone else, and she'll be able to keep his warm hugs and gentle smiles and kind words. Eri thinks that he might be an angel. One of his classmates told her a story about them, and they sounded exactly like Izuku. So when he offers his hand, she takes it with a wide smile just like his, and hopes that one day she'll be an angel just like him. Underscore, 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 underscore. Aizawa finds him on the couch of the common room, watching TV with Todoroki, Shinsu, Tokoyami, and Eri. He discreetly hands Midoriya, who's in between Shinsu and Todoroki, with Eri on his lap, an envelope. He already knows the contents of the envelope, so he's only slightly surprised when the green-haired boy bursts into tears in the middle of a reality TV show. Four heads swing to Midoriya, various levels of alarm in their postures. Todoroki even shoots him a glare. Eri looks the most worried and frantically tries wiping Midoriya's face with her oversized hoodie, which is most definitely from her green-haired caretaker, and no small amount of panic. It's fine, I'm just so happy, he sniffs, a smile fixed on his face as he shows Eri the papers. She clearly doesn't understand it and furrows her eyebrows, looking from the paper to Midoriya with confusion. Midoriya! The green-haired boy jumps to his feet, taking Eri with him and twirling around once, eliciting a startled yelp from the girl. Guess what? You're a Midoriya now, Eri. He grins up at Eri, whose wide eyes only get wider when she realizes what's going on. Really? Really? And then she promptly bursts into tears, making the boys on the couch more panicked, to the point of standing up and uselessly holding their hands out to try and stop whatever was going on. Aizawa's lips twitched at the sight of his student and his new daughter, their expressions rivaling his cat's in cuteness. He hadn't seen his student openly cry since he'd come back from being missing, and something about it felt right. Job done, he slips out the door, using his gray scarf to cover the small smile gracing his face. Underscore, 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 underscore. In Izuku's subconscious, 8 shadowy figures stand still. They don't move, don't speak. They simply wait, as they always have, as they always will. The 9th will return soon. All they need to do is wait. Notes. Next is Villain Day. I've rewritten it 3 freaking times, but I'm finally to the point where I'm satisfied with it. I hope you all enjoyed this. I know it's pretty short, but it'll be important in the long run. Have a wonderful day night. Chapter 37, Villain Day and All That Ensues. Pit 1, Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. It's finally here. The day he's been waiting for, planning for, preparing for. Adrenaline and anxiety buzz in his veins as he fidgets in his seat, waiting for the bell to ring. Today isn't half day due to the Battle Royale, but he has a lot of things he needs to pick up before he's ready for it. He and Aizawa already have an agreement that he'll take Eri and make sure she stays safe and away from All Might. The little girl on his lap seems to notice his fidgeting and keeps twisting to look at him. When the bell rings, everyone bursts into action, and he uses the noise to lean down to Eri. I'm going to win this, okay? And when I come back, you'll get to meet my family, he whispers, a secretive smile gracing his lips. She lights up at that, looking over at him with bright red eyes. Really? Yep, now stay with Aizawa-sensei and wait for me, okay? He leans away from her and gestures towards his teacher, whose yellow sleeping bag is nowhere to be seen as he waits by the door of the now empty classroom. Okay, she cheers, wiggling off of his lap into Aizawa, who watches her with gruff, barely hidden fondness. As she takes his hand, he'd always had a soft spot for small, cute things. Izuku's smile drops as soon as the pair leave the room, a cold look in his green eyes as he stares directly at the camera in the corner of the room. Just wait. I'll win this and force you to let me leave campus. Underscore, 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 underscore. His first stop is the costume department, which has a couple of other hero course students milling around, but no first years, unsurprisingly. He walks in briskly, heading straight for Yanagi's workspace. They wait for him with a neutral expression, a red package in their hands. The sight of the package has a feral smile spreading across his face, and he looks up at Yanagi with bright, cold eyes that make them shudder internally. Yanagi, Midoriya. They hold the package out for him, and he takes it. He doesn't open it, though. Not yet. Instead, he bows to the person who helped him, a more serious expression on his face. Thank you for helping me, despite my classmates' behavior. I appreciate this from the bottom of my heart, and if I ever want a modification done to my hero costume, I'll be coming to you. Then he straightens and turns on his heel, walking out of the costume department with graceful, almost predatory gait, leaving Yanagi staring at his back. Underscore, 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 underscore. Do you have the stuff? Yep, plus a surprise. Hatsume's grin is a little more maniac than usual. Oh? So here's the gloves and boots. He takes them, examining them, before carefully putting them in his backpack. The rings. Izuku slips them into his pockets. The mask, the knives. He puts those in his backpack too, then turns back to Hatsume, whose grin has somehow gotten bigger. And the ultimate baby Tilda. She purrs at the tangled heap of leather and metal in her hands before handing it to Izuku. Also, stick out your tongue. The green-haired boy frowns but does as he's told, only to feel sharp pain when Hatsume grabs it and uses one of her babies to do something. Instantly, he yanks his head back, the taste of blood and a metal ball thingy on his tongue, making him gag slightly. What was that? He sticks his tongue out again, desperately trying to see what the hell Hatsume did to him. She grins and brandishes a silvery piece of metal in her hand. I made you a way to breathe fire. What? He pulls his phone out of his pocket and turns on the camera function. I have a tongue piercing. It's completely healed, thanks to the second's quirk. But still, that was so uncalled for. You could have just asked, you know. Hey, anyway, put this on. She shoves the piece of metal in his face. When you have the mask at half face, you can drink this. She shoves a flask of something in his face too. And click the metal on your tongue against the mouth guard. It should produce a spark, then you breathe out. Use your lips to control the range and concentration of the flames. If you drink from this one, she shoves another flask in his face. Then you'll produce blue flames. Be careful, though. It'll probably burn your mouth. Izuku stares at the items in his face for a minute before letting out a sigh. Hatsume isn't being malevolent. She just has no concepts of boundaries and normal human healing limits. This is normal for her, and she's a really talented inventor. So it makes sense she'd have some quirks. Okay, thank you, Hatsume. She grins at him, coppery goggles glinting under the fluorescent lights. Give my babies a good showing, okay? Of course. Underscore, 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 underscore. 41st year heroic students wait outside 50-foot-tall concrete walls, their chatter rising to the teacher's booth, filled with monitors of the entire training ground they'll be using for Villain Day. Inside the booth sits Eri, Aizawa, and Present Mike, the three sitting in the positions closest to the monitors. The other teachers are sitting in chairs scattered around the room, while Eri is drowning in Aizawa's capture scarf, eyes fixed on the screens with unusual intensity. Right is present. Mike is about to leave. A banging noise comes from the door. The voice hero pauses, then reaches for the door handle, only for it to be slammed open by a very pissed-off Gran Torino. Ace, you You little worm, I had to hear about everything from that batshit fanboy of yours instead of you. And you didn't invite me to Villain Day? Disgraceful. Skinny All Might pales, blood dripping from his lips as he scrambles to his feet and starts apologizing. Eri is frozen in place, watching the interaction with wide red eyes. Aizawa's eyes flash red as he stares at Gran Torino, jerking his head toward the little girl at his feet. The older hero freezes, confused frown on his face. Whose kid is that? All Might clears his throat awkwardly, but Principal Nezu just smiles and sips his tea. This is Eri. She's Midoriya's daughter. Gran Torino's face slackens as he processes the information, completely still. The blond man beside him trembles in fear because he's never seen his master this still in all of his career, and it scares the literal shit out of him. Silently, he wonders if he should try to run away while the older man is distracted. As if hearing his thoughts, the yellow-caped man jumps into the air and lands a solid kick on his apprentice's face. You irresponsible buffon! What have you been teaching those children? The staff room collectively sighs, already having witnessed this after internships, when the older hero had verbally dug into their coworker with a vengeance. No one was willing to interfere between the pair, so instead they turned their attention to the monitors once more. Underscore, 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 underscore. What do you think of my costume? It's awesome. Did you fill out a form too? They were so easy. Definitely. And they already had my measurements from the beginning of the year, which makes everything fit perfectly. Izuku adjusts the mask on his face, his tight ponytail tugging at his scalp as he does so. Around him, people have started forming groups, and he takes this time to scope out everyone and their costumes. It's easy to see since most people are giving him a wide berth due to his anonymous status. He takes a deep breath, looking to the blue sky. The wind nips at his exposed fingers, and he spots a drone high above. I'm going to win this, no matter what. All right, are you ready? Present Mike screams, appearing on a wooden platform over the crowd of first-year students. Yeah, they scream back, and fists are raised in the air. Present. Mike grins and throws his arms out dramatically. That's what I like to hear. Before we get started, let's review the rules. Shuta? The blond man points to his companion in the booth, who's currently regretting his friendship choices. Sighing, Eraserhead leans into a microphone conveniently placed in his hands by the white-furred principal. The rules are simple. You can take whatever you can carry into the arena. You can't kill anyone, and you can't seriously injure someone. The prize is a week off of school and an unknown value of money. Plus Ultra. Despite his unenthusiastic delivery of the school motto, he gets a loud response back, probably because everyone is so excited. You heard him, folks. When your doors open, you're free to go in. The competition will start after 5 minutes. Remember, stick to your new fighting styles and do your best. Japan is watching you. The mood doesn't dim at that, and President Mick grins as the gates creak loudly and slowly start to open. This year would be especially interesting, since 1A have encountered villains multiple times. Everyone online was buzzing about it, and as many views as the sports festival got, Villain Day would get more, especially with this batch of kids. Not to mention it was only streamed on UA-owned channels, and there are no in-person tickets, making the event even more exclusive. 40 teenagers surge forwards, only for a masked figure to fly above them, coat fluttering in the wind as they twist mid-air and throw a smoke bomb into the crowd of teenagers. Present Mike watches, eyes wide, as a gigantic gun appears in their hands, and they fire several shots into the smoke still mid-air, then disappear into the city, the only evidence of their crimes, a cloud of clearing smoke and a list of names. Underscore, 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 underscore. Kyukajiru is out. Shiahi Kurorio is out. Setsuna Togaki is out. Jirota Shishida is out. Underscore, 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 underscore. I like that one. They got spunk, Gran Torino announces as they watch the masked figure make impossible jumps through the fake city's buildings, silvery strings aiding their journey. Snipe stares intensely at the screen, hands twitching around his drink as he watches them fly through the air. That, that kind of move takes years of practice and near-perfect marksmanship. Either that kid's lucky or they know what they're doing, he mutters, finger tapping the rim of his cup. Beside him, Midnight and 13 exchange looks. Man, I can't believe they took out 4 other kids before it even started. Present Mike huffs as he walks through the door, plopping into his seat gracelessly. They probably took out those kids because their quirks pose the greatest challenge to them, Aizawa comments, sipping his cup of coffee as he half watches the monitors. Half watches Eri, who seems transfixed by the screens. Oh, do we have some guesses about our mystery student already? Midnight purrs, leaning forwards with a sly smile. The teacher pointedly ignores his friend. He knows better than to get involved in any sort of guessing game with Midnight and Present Mike. The last time he'd ended up blacking out and waking up in a warehouse dressed in a spotless white wedding dress with several kittens on his chest and no idea how he got there. Needless to say, no more guessing games for him. Underscore, 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 underscore. As the future heroes turned villains invaded the city, the streets echoed with despairing screams and cries of victory. Some hid in fortresses, some hunted down others, some claimed territory, and others lie in wait for their prey to come to them. And above it all, he watched. Black and white mask glinting in the sunlight. He would wait, just as he always has. Underscore, 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 underscore. The first person to get out was Aoyama, who was hunted down by Satu, grabbed by his glittering white cape, and promptly punched in the face. That day, the world knew that he put non-edible glitter into his classmates' cake. Underscore, 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 underscore. Yuga Oyama is out. Underscore, 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 underscore. Ida is next, having stopped mid-run to scold Kendo about property damage as she fought her classmate Shiozaki. He's promptly bitch-slapped into a building and doesn't get up. Underscore, 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 underscore. Tenya Ida's out. Underscore, 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 underscore. Kaminari is taken out when he tries to join forces with Kirishima and Tetsu, and is quickly thrown to the wolves so the pair can escape from Mina, who wields acid in her palms in a bodysuit of shiny black armor, screaming her title to the world, Alien Queen. Underscore, 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 underscore. Denki Kaminari is out. Underscore, 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 underscore. Hagakura attempts to take shelter in a building, only to be caught in one of Yaoyorozu's many traps. As she attempts to pry herself from the wall, she sees a figure dressed in a long, flowing red coat approach her, needle in hand. She tries to move, but it's too late. Underscore, 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 underscore. Toru Hagakure is out. Underscore, 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 underscore. None of them compare to Uraraka and Todoroki. They dominate their respective sides of the arena, turning them into battlefields as they let loose. Pure, feral joy flaring in their eyes as they watch their prey attempt to run away. They're forces to reckon with and leave their respective sides of the arena looking like war zones with shivering bodies and rubble scattered everywhere. Underscore, 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 underscore. Bakugo storms through the city on the hunt for the shitty nerd. Anyone he encounters is blasted out of the way, and he works a path of destruction through the city. He's brushing the edges of Todoroki's territory when he hears it. An unhinged maniac cackle far above. His head whips to the noise and he sees a blonde with purple eyes in a magician costume high above him, grinning down at him. No fucking extras gets to look down on me like that. Yeah. His face twists into a snarl, and explosions crackle in his palms as he launches himself upwards, reaching for the blonde extra's face. No magician wannabe is going to look down on him. Underscore, 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 underscore. In the shadows, Tokoyami lies in wait, dark shadows, glowing eyes, the only thing illuminating the dark alleyway. His comrade of darkness was taken out at the very beginning of the competition, leaving him alone in this cold, vicious place. The fire of righteous fury burns in his chest, fueling dark shadow as he plucks unsuspecting villains from the streets and drags them into their domain. He will wait, and when he finds the masked figure, he will strike, fast and twice as vicious. He will avenge his comrade. Underscore, 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 underscore. The sound of boots hitting the floor makes Shuji freeze, instantly turning the ends of his arms into more ears and tapping Kuda, who jumps, then turns to the cockroach at their feet, looking nervous. It stills, then scurries away to do its master's bidding. After a few moments, he hears the boots stop, leaving the empty parking garage ominously silent. The allies hold their breaths, and Shuji desperately tries to remember where he's heard that gate before. Beside him, Kuda lets out a yelp that echoes loudly through the concrete structure. Then his normally passive face twists into anger, and he jumps to his feet, running out from behind their hiding spot with a guttural battle cry. As he does so, cockroaches swarm out from the cracks of the building, turning the ground into a sea of squirming legs and brown carapaces. Shuji leaps to his feet, but the cockroaches ignore him, heading for where Kuda went. Quickly, he wades through the writhing mass of bugs, looking for his ally, only for one of his arms to be charred by a burst of orange flames. He shouts in pain, but it's nothing compared to the scream of feral rage he recognizes as Kuda's. A loud crack echoes through the empty parking garage, then a whoosh and someone drops to the floor. At his feet, the cockroaches stop moving. As he takes a step forward, they all scatter in different directions, and his heart sinks. Could Kuda be something hits the back of his head, and he crumples to the floor. Underscore, 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 underscore. Kuji Kuda is out. Meizu Shoji is out. Underscore, 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 underscore. Within 45 minutes, over half of the first-year students are wiped out. Most of the arena is destroyed, or at least damaged, and rubble litters the streets. He leaps from rooftop to rooftop, scanning the streets as he skirts the edges of Bakugo and Monoma's explosive fight. He's been keeping track of those eliminated, and he knows who's left. To win, he needs to eliminate the biggest wild card in the competition. A cold rush of satisfaction rushes through him as he spots a glimmer of metal from the inside of a nearby building. Oh, he's found his next target. Underscore, 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 underscore. In a rundown bar, a group of villains watch the screen with amusement as a figure with cracked mask lands on the roof of an unassuming building, the rings on their hands glinting in the sunlight. One villain in particular is watching the screen with a knowing smile behind his geometrically patterned black and white mask, almost exactly like the persons on the screen. The person on the screen tilts their head, their dark hair catching the sun's rays and revealing itself to be a deep green as they look toward the camera and give it a little wave. Grins spread across their faces as they realize that the figure is wearing brilliant red artist gloves. Yes, this is the one they're looking for. Underscore, 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 underscore. Sweaty, nauseous, and slightly out of breath, Uraraka stops in the middle of a street, chunks of concrete raining down around her as she lets out a relieved sigh. There's no need to be on guard. After all, she'd cleared out this section of the city and scared off most of her competitors. The street lamp in her hands remains at ready as she takes a deep breath and then opens her eyes again, the fire of determination burning in her eyes as she moved forwards, on the hunt again. underscore 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 Momo Yaoyorozu is out. Underscore 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 Todoroki slams an icicle into the side of a kid with an oddly shaped head. They'd attempted to crush him under a giant stream of words, which he'd burned to ashes, and by the time he cornered them, they could barely talk anymore. The person crumples to the floor, clutching their ribs, only to be encased in a coffin of ice with only their head free. Todoroki slams his boot into the side of their head violently, making sure to have knocked them out before moving on. The competition isn't over yet. Underscore 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 underscore. So manga Fukudashi is out. Underscore 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 underscore. Uraraka, please. Clang. Tetsu jumps back, trying to avoid his hardened, manly brother from Class 1A and failing. For the past 10 minutes, Uraraka had been using Kirishima as a baseball bat against Tetsu, but both were wearing down quickly. And despite the redhead's attempts at peacemaking and surrendering, she doesn't seem to be slowing down or stopping anytime soon. "This isn't manly," he sobs, then dissolves into a fresh bout of tears and profuse apologies to his manly brother, Tetsu. Underscore 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 Tetsu is out. Ejiro Kirishima's out. Underscore 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 underscore. He stands on the highest building in the arena, watching the buildings around him shudder from his classmates fighting. By his count, there are 10 contestants left, including himself. He knows these contestants, their names and quirks and personalities. He knows that deep down, they're not villains. They don't have the right mindset for villainy. At their core, they're heroes. Which is why his plan will work. Let the show begin. Notes. Not going to lie, I freaked myself out writing the bug scene and ended up sitting weirdly for a solid 20 minutes because I didn't want to touch the floor. Anyways, we finally made it to Villain Day. I've been building up anticipation for it for a couple chapters, and I'm super excited to be writing it. I have a playlist and everything. What do you think so far? Will Izuku win? What's going to happen? You'll find out soon. Have a great day/night. Chapter 38. Villain Day and all that ensues. PT 2. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. A series of explosions rock the arena. Boom, 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 boom. One by one, buildings crumble in a glorious display of destruction. Boom, 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 boom. The remaining contestants feel the final explosion in their bones, rattling their teeth and leaving them shell-shocked as they stare at the cloud of dust spreading across the arena, obscuring the blue sky. From the shadows, he grins. Underscore 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 underscore. Holy shit! Ectoplasm murmurs the words under his breath, unable to tear his eyes away from the crumbling buildings. He's not the only one. Every teacher's eyes are fixed on the screens, various levels of horror in their eyes. Even All Might looks horrified, and he clenches the sides of his chair tightly enough to turn his knuckles white. Who even did this? We didn't provide explosives, and no one could carry enough to effectively destroy that many buildings, Midnight asks, clutching her bag of candy tightly. In the corner, Summontoss presses his head against the wall, tears streaming down his square face at the thought of all of the cleanup he's going to have to do soon. Nezu's teeth gleam in the light of the TV screens. What an interesting thought! The veteran teachers pale at the excitement in Principal Nezu's voice. Nothing good happens when the mammal is excited. Aizawa snaps out of his daze quickly, looking to Eri. He's surprised to find that she doesn't even look scared. Rather, she looks like she's waiting for something. Her hands are tight around his capture weapon, and she leans forwards, red eyes fixated on the screens. She must be looking for him. Grimly, he wonders if Midoriya was crushed in the rubble. That would be traumatizing for everyone involved. And Recovery Girl might blow a gasket if she had to fix another bone in the green-haired boy's body. Stay safe, Midoriya. She's waiting for you. Underscore, 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 underscore. The remaining contestants find each other, pulling each other out of the rubble and grouping together, searching for anyone injured by the explosions. They group together, yelling out commands and scraping through the destruction with a competition far from their minds. A deadly sense of calm washes over him as he presses the gem on his ring, listening to the telltale clicking of machinery moving. In seconds, a sniper rifle rests in his hands. His arms and hands settle into their proper places, and he takes aim, eyes sharpening with concentration as he focuses on his target. Idly, he wonders if they're watching. They probably are and laughing over heroes in training playing villains. He can't say he blames them. Bang! The gunshot rings through the air, and Honanuki drops to the floor. Their softening quirk would have put him at a huge disadvantage, especially combined with Uraraka's meteorite attacks and Bakugo's blasts. Juzo Honanuki is out. Tokoyami and Kendo whirl around, but he's already gone, the gun shrinking back into a ring as he fits his mouthpiece back into his mouth. He'll need it soon. He soars through the air silently, the omnidirectional gear making a faint whirring sound as it lashes out, the hooks embedding themselves into the side of a building. Inspiration had struck as he'd been going through his quirk analysis page on Yaoyorozu when Villain Day was announced, and he remembered the pre-quirk era show Attack on Titan, and how omnidirectional gear work could potentially work similarly to Black Whip in terms of maneuverability. He'd watched the first couple episodes again, took a screenshot of the blueprints for it, and showed it to Hatsune. She really went above and beyond with it, though. The triggers for the gear were in his gloves instead of swords, like in the show. And she'd made it out of some sort of near indestructible material. He's really lucky to have had her help with this. His red boots hit the top of the building with a thud, and he strolls to the edge of the building, following the sound of voices. Fucking mindfuck! Where's Shitty Deku? I told you I don't know you, asshole. Why don't you fuck off and go find him yourself instead of shaking me down? Shinsu snaps back irritatedly. You Class A bastards really are incompetent. Fighting amongst yourselves during a time of need? How? Monoma goes on a rant that he tunes out, machinery whirring once again as he crouches down and rests the barrel of the sniper on the edge of the roof. He peers into the optical scope, adjusting the weapon in his hands instinctively as he focuses on his target. Bang! He smiles when Shinsu hits the ground. Hitoshi Shinsu is out. Oh, underscore, 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 underscore. Todoroki and Uraraka stare at each other, unwilling to look away from each other, lest the other try something. Fire burns in both their eyes and determination roots them in place. Neither will back down. That is, until they hear a gunshot in the distance. Both jump and look towards the sound. Hitoshi Shinsu is out. They tense at that, looking towards each other, then nodding and running towards the sound. Underscore, 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 underscore. He observes them picking their way across the rubble and heading straight for each other with mild amusement. They're reacting just as he expected. From his perch, he watches as the three groups freeze when they see each other, instantly sliding into battle-ready positions. Bakugo's screams reach him, and he notices Monoma shifting to move his back to the rubble around them. As the tension reaches its height, he presses the gem on his ring, his sniper appearing in his hands as he takes aim. Bang! Dark Shadow knocks Tokoyami out of the way just in time, shrieking wordlessly. How annoying! He huffs as the sentient shadow turns and glares at him, alerting his 7 remaining opponents of his hiding place. He knew he should have taken care of Tokoyami earlier. A wave of ice rushes at him, and he leaps away from it, twisting midair and landing on a nearby rooftop, rolling to avoid hurting himself. Quickly, he taps the button on the side of his mask, which retracts to show his mouth. Taking a swig from the less potent flask Hatsum gave him, he walks towards the edge of the roof. Between Todoroki, Kendo, and Monoma, having my coat on is going to hider me at some point. He's reluctant to take off a layer of protection, but he doesn't want a repeat of that time someone grabbed his uniform to pin him down. You're the one who took out my comrade at the beginning of this farce, Tokoyami says, eyes narrowed into slits as he watches the person on the roof frown. Does he mean Kurorio? He huffs, sliding off his coat and setting it on the ledge beside him. I'll need to get them away from Shinsu before starting the fighting in earnest. Oi, bastard! Did you take out that shitty Deku before me? I can use this. After all, it would take a little push to get them running after him. He grins, giving the blonde the finger and throwing himself off of the rooftop. An enraged scream and Ice follows him, but he's already gone, zipping through the air with a wild grin on his face. That's right, follow me. Underscore, 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 underscore. In the waiting room, the teachers watch as four figures give chase, leaving an unconscious body and two contestants behind. Miniature glaciers just barely miss the flying figure, and huge pieces of rubble are easily dodged. Even Dark Shadow's attacks are avoided with ease. The masked person arcs through the air gracefully, body twisting and contorting as he leads four people further and further away from their comrades. Powerloader watches the machine at work with a critical eye, something about the figure tickling at the back of his head. I could swear I've seen that somewhere before, he mumbles, lacing his fingers together as he leans forwards. Do we have a guest for our mystery contestant? Midnight asks, leaning over ectoplasm to get to the other teacher. Powerloader jumps, frowning. No, I feel like I've seen the gear they're using. The leather straps and the metal part on their back. It looks familiar, but I can't remember where I've seen it. That's because one of your students made all of his gear, Nezu chirps, a serene smile on his snout as he sips his tea. I thought so, Aizawa says, glancing down at Eri. She looks enthralled by the chase, red eyes taking everything in. Yeah, but using that stuff can't be easy. It takes a lot of core strength to give gravity the middle finger, Gran Torino says, something like gruff admiration tinging his voice. It's odd that they haven't used their quirk yet, though, All Might says, confusion coloring his voice. Aizawa resists the urge to roll his eyes, eye twitching as he levels the symbol of peace with a deadpan stare. If they had a weak quirk, it would only logical for them to rely on technology. The symbol of peace nods thoughtfully. He himself has his fair share of issues using support items, or, rather, breaking them. But he could see how those with weaker quirks would need them. No, underscore, 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 underscore. Right here should do it. It's far enough away from the incapacitated kids that they won't get hurt from collateral damage. He extends his hands, flipping midair and changing directions with ease, surprising his pursuers. He's heading this way. Finally stopped running, you damn coward? Dark Shadow lashes out at him. At the same time, Bakugu lets off an explosion. The two collide and he grins, sliding underneath the pair and kicking Uraraka in the stomach, then dancing away from a stream of orange flames. Bakugu and Tokoyami lunge for him again, oddly in sync, and he grins, clicking the metal on his tongue to the mouthguard. Heat blooms in his mouth, and he breathes out, flames erupting from his lips. Honestly, he wasn't surprised that it barely burned him the first time he used it. He'd long suspected he has residual mutations from his dad's quirk. Hot or spicy food has little to no effect on him. And combined with Second's quirk, he's basically flameproof, though he's not sure if that will hold up if he tries to use hotter fire. Both of his opponents jump back, Dark Shadow shrinking considerably. Who are you? No one in 1A or 1B has a fire-breathing quirk. He blurs as he lunges forwards, hand grabbing Tokoyami's beak and slamming his head into his knee. Before he can finish the job, Dark Shadow knocks him off of its master, and he rolls to absorb impact, noticing the ground has become slick and slippery. Todoroki, Thankfully, his boots have enough traction for him to move properly, and he narrowly dodges a piece of rubble aimed at his head. Guys, I don't think he's in the heroics course, Uraraka calls, sounding anxious. All of them tense at that, their heads swinging towards him with new aggression. He tilts his head, stance low and ready. He knows that with this new suspicion, they'll fight harder. They'll be more careless. That's why he doesn't deny it. Just bares his teeth and takes another swig from his flask. A glacier promptly knocks him into the air, ouch. But considering they think he's a villain, this is probably premium treatment, and he takes a moment to breathe, accepting the throbbing pain from his midsection as he plummets to the ground. A distant, familiar scream makes him twist, silvery lines shooting out to the nearest building and yanking him out of his freefall. Explosions signify that Bakugo is coming, and he promptly changes trajectory, using the handy glacier Todoroki created to throw himself into the air again. As he soars above his classmates, he notes their formation and how Uraraka is starting to collect larger pieces of rubble, while Tokoyami and Todoroki guard her. Considering they're taking him seriously now, Todoroki won't be using his flames anytime soon. Good! Silvery lines lash out again, and he dive-bombs Tokoyami, smashing through the wave of ice spikes and wrapping his arms around Dark Shadow, who shielded its master. He grins, keeping a tight hold on it and using the slippery ground to spin around Tokoyami, ignoring Dark Shadow biting him to try to get free. Todoroki tries to encase his feet in ice, but he can't get a clear shot from how fast they're spinning. Tokoyami's feet lift off of the ground, and he lets out a startled yell, but Izuku just grins and lets go, sending the bird-headed boy flying into the rubble-filled streets. A blast clips him in the side, and he spins off kilter, knocking into Todoroki, who lights himself on fire instinctively. The fire forces Bakugo back, and Izuku ducks out of the way of a fiery punch, sending the strings backwards just in time to avoid several pieces of rubble to the head and side. He lands on the glacier, watching Bakugo use small explosions to simulate flight right as Uraraka touches what looks to be the remainders of a wall. Time to use my weapons then. His smile drops and he reaches down, freeing his knives from the straps on his legs. Hatsume had coated them with strong tranquilizer, so as long as he nicked someone and it got in their bloodstream, they'd be out in seconds. Using his gun at such close ranges is a no-go, since it could seriously injure someone if he isn't careful. He doesn't trust the quirk not to get weird, since people are trying to hurt him. Bakugo is above him now, a manic battle grin on his face as he screams, "Take this! Achilles impact!" He slides out of the way just in time to avoid the bastardized version of Bakugo's howitzer impact, ears ringing and chips of ice flying everywhere. Nitroglycerin burns his nostrils as he tumbles down the glacier, breaths coming in short and quick as he desperately tries to not have a panic attack in the middle of a competition. He can't afford to lose, not here. Heat licks his clothes just like middle school. Laughter echoes in his ears, and the metallic smell of blood and burning flesh pain. Run. His world blurs. Underscore, 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 underscore. Everyone in the waiting room watches as the masked figure takes off impossibly fast, leaping over rubble and disappearing from view in seconds. The three who were fighting them take off as well, shouting about splitting up to find them and take them out. I wonder why they ran. It seemed like they had the situation handled, Midnight says, tilting her head to look at the monitors with a thoughtful look in her eyes. They must have gotten scared about how close Bakugo got to decapitating them, 13 says, leaning back in their chair. That's fair. Anyone on the receiving end of Bakugo's bigger explosions is bound to get nervous, Midnight nods, taking a sip of her drink that most definitely is not just soda. The fight got really intense for a second there. The masked one basically used Tokoyami's weakness to limit the range of Bakugo and Todoroki's quirks. So that's why young Todoroki wasn't using his fire, All Might says, non-existent eyebrows raising at the realization. Aizawa rolls his eyes. Just when he thought he'd seen every bit of incompetence that the symbol of peace had to offer, the blonde would somehow show himself up. I wish we had audio. I want to know what got them to work almost in sync like that, despite the nature of this competition, Ectoplasm says, taking a handful of popcorn from the almost empty bucket. Say me. They were tearing each other up just a few minutes ago. President Mike pipes up, sprawled across his chair. You all do realize that we don't have a student that can breathe fire. Semitos speaks for the first time since the buildings were destroyed. Everyone pauses. Actually, they can't breathe fire. Powerloader pipes up. I just reviewed the footage. He holds out his phone for the room to see. And I noticed that every time they breathe fire, they take a swig from a flask. Also, I noticed that they have some sort of mouthpiece in. I think they're simulating breathing fire for whatever reason. That's actually pretty cool. Are they hiding their identity or something? President Mike asks, leaning backwards so far that his chair creaks dangerously. I don't know. I'm just explaining how that she stuff works. Powerloader shrugs and pockets his phone, silently congratulating himself for the save. Nezu smiles into his almost empty teacup. Where did he go? I don't know. None of the cameras are on him. Probably because he destroyed most of them. Damn it. He was so close to beating them. Now's not the time. I know, right? They all lean forwards, watching, waiting. They know the green-haired boy won't go down easily. Even if the entire world was against him, he'd get up and start fighting again. So, why was he running away? Chapter 39. Villain Day and all that ensues. Page 3. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Darkness surrounds him, comforting him. No one can find him in the dark. No one can hurt him in the dark. Every breath is a death rattle and his chest aches. I'm sorry. I can't. He gasps, trying to breathe, but he can't. He's choking on air. I can't do this. His scars burn, like they were made yesterday instead of years and years and years ago. And why can't I breathe? Nope, you're stuck with us now. What? We're kind of like strays. You give us a little affection and attention, and bam, you have permanent asshole friends. Dobby. Indeed. No one here will blame you for something out of your control. Mr. Compress. Come on, kid. Get up. I can't. I'm not strong enough, he whispers, voice hoarse. So? You said you'd win. I did, he admits, throat dry. So get up. They're waiting for you. Images of the league flash through his mind. Toga hugging him, Magne's stories, Kurogiri's subtle words of encouragement, twice talking to him after a nightmare, Dabi tattooing him, Shigaraki wrapping an arm around him, Spinner hovering over him, Mr. Compress showing him magic tricks. That's right. They're waiting for him. He left with no explanation. He hadn't even said goodbye. And he'd told Eri that she'd meet them. He couldn't break his promise. They're waiting for me. Underscore, 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 underscore. Oh my God, what happened, Mina says, propping up Tokoyami with wide eyes. The bird-headed boy winces at the movement, his sides throbbing from crashing into a particularly large piece of rubble when the foul villain had thrown him away from the fight. Dark Shadow hadn't been able to absorb all of the impact, and combined with his earlier head injury, it's hard to even think, much less move. There's an intruder. They cover fighting our comrades. We must find them before they commit any more nefarious deeds. Mina's eyes widened behind her black helmet. Seriously? How did they even get in? I do not know, but you must hurry. They're very cuff. Vi rai hard to fig ht. The ayas at our week. Ni ss to ligada against us. Ass holi. Dark Shadow pipes up, peeking out from underneath Tokoyami's dark cloak. Mina frowns. Are you sure you're okay with being left here? What if they target you because you're alone and injured? Tihi or Siori and Tiawain, Igiti Nenjiu or Araka, TOD or OKI, Enye Debakogo you, SOIN WE, so you would be finny. Budate Yeleni Diri NF Orc Eam Memendis to win. She hesitates but then nods. Okay, I'll go. Let me just move you somewhere a little more sheltered before I leave. As she stands propping up the limp boy in his shadow, she feels a sense of foreboding wash over her. She turns around just in time to see a cold green eye staring at her from the end of a gun. Bang, bang, underscore, 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 underscore. Mina Ashido is out. Fumikage Tokoyami is out. Underscore, 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 underscore. Todoroki nearly encases the orange-haired girl in a glacier when she appears out of nowhere. However, upon explaining the situation to her, she agrees to a temporary truce to find the villain. He doesn't remember her name or quirk, but two pairs of eyes are better than one, and they advance through the rubble in silence. As he's approaching a pile of rubble cautiously, a speaker crackles high above, making him jump. Mina Ashido is out. Fumikage Tokoyami is out. He tenses. Could that be the villain's doing? Then why would the system announce it? Oh, it was a system, not an actual person. For all they knew, the teachers could be taking a snack break, or they just expected them to find the villain and capture them themselves. He frowns at that thought, then turns to the orange-haired girl. Did you hear any sort of noise that could point us in the direction of those out? We need to check if they fought each other out, or if the villain did it. She shakes her head, a concerned frown on her face. Isn't it odd that the teachers aren't interfering? They could have assumed that it was a student. From the person's build, they could easily pass as a teenager. Or this is a test. The orange-haired girl frowns harder at that. A test? Isn't it Villain Day? Exactly. He turns, leaving the confused girl jogging to catch up with his long strides. Underscore, 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 underscore. As he crouches on the roof, he checks the chamber of his gun. Ah, it's empty. What a pain. He really should have asked Hatsum for some extra ammunition, but he'd forgotten after the surprise tongue piercing and the excitement of being able to breathe fire. And since I lost my knives, looks like he'll be using his last resort. He hadn't really wanted to show this skill off, but he will if he has to. After all, he'd said he was going to win, and relying on 20% of One for All would only get him so far. Plus, Bakugo had damaged his ODM gear, which was unfortunate. He'd been hoping to keep up the farce a little longer, but he supposes that he has no choice. Using One for All is the only way to get the mobility I'll need. Avoiding Todoroki's glaciers will be more difficult now, but he's willing to snap a finger or two to beat the other boy. It'll be just like the sports festival. He smiles amusedly. Right. There are at least 5 people left. I'll need to keep an eye out for Monoma and avoid Uraraka until the last second, since she has martial arts training and probably knows how to disarm an opponent with a weapon. From the crack in his mask, his green eyes glow with predatory light as the gun in his hand shrinks, leaving him empty-handed. Not for long. Lightning crackles around his body as he leaps across the roof, unaware of the bluish tint it's taken on. Underscore, 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 underscore. It was Midoriya. What the F? Aizawa's quirk infused glare silences present mic. Everyone is staring at the screen in disbelief as they watch the resident sunshine student leap from rooftop to rooftop, mask damaged enough to reveal a lone, glowing green eye. All Might is frozen in place, staring at his successor with wide eyes. But that couldn't be Midoriya, could it? His boy would never? Gran Torino watches the screen with disbelief. This is the trembling boy that couldn't even use One for All without shattering a bone? The one who cried when he first used full cowling successfully? What happened? At Aizawa's feet, Eri smiles brightly. Of course it was Izuku. He said he'd win, and she knows that. When he says something, he means it. And once he's done, they'll go visit his family. She hopes they're as nice as him. Underscore, 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 underscore. He lands on the crumbling rooftop with a dull thud, ears pricked at the sound of conversation. Just saying that it could be a test. Maybe they've been sent by the teachers to teach us about being good villains. Todoroki, why would the teachers do something like that? We're first years. They should save that for the second years. Or heck, even the third years. Yes, but they've been moving up second-year events because of the villain attacks. So why not add a twist to Villain Day as well? I believe the masked villain may be their way of spicing things up. Izuku's lips twitch. He should have known the other boy would start theorizing as soon as he was presented with a new situation. After the sports festival, he'd given Todoroki his personal number, and the other boy ended up keeping him up with evidence that pointed towards him and All Might being related. It had made for an eventful all-nighter, to say the least. Two are going to be difficult to take out noiselessly without a gun. He huffs. He'll be attracting people to his location, so it'll probably end up as another 3-on-1 fight again. That'll be a pain, especially with Bakugo trying to seriously injure him. Focus. All you need to do is incapacitate one of them. Green eyes sharpen, and he presses the gems on his rings. Faint mechanical whirring, and the new weight in his hands lets him know that the rings are still working. Thank goodness. Deadly calm quickly follows his relief. He's handling real weapons against quirks and people, so he'll need to be careful. No using one for all while wielding the swords. Otherwise, someone will lose a hand. He adjusts his grip on the swords, gracefully getting to his feet, eyes focused on his target. Strike fast. Too fast for them to react. They're waiting for me. Underscore, 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 underscore. Where did he get those? Go Zuku! Toga cheers, a big grin on her face. Fuck him up! Run away! I hope he doesn't cut himself with those, Mr. Compress says, watching the screen from the bar, drink in hand. Nah, he knows what he's doing. See how he's holding them? Spinner asked, gesturing towards the green-haired boy on screen. Not all of us use long-ass swords, Spinner. Shigaraki huffs, fingers twitching around his box of apple juice. They're called katanas, you heathen. Fuck you, you're the heathen. You never played a pre-quirk video game before you came here. Shigaraki screeches, pointing an accusatory finger at the lizard man. The hell do video games have to do with this? Dabi scoffs, leaning on the back of the couch and looking a little less bored than usual. Everything. Underscore, 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 underscore. Ozone tickles Kendo's nose. Confused, she turns to look, only to see a blur of green and silver. Before she can even process what she's seeing, sharp pain flares in her arm, making her cry out. The last thing she sees is Todoroki's surprised face. Underscore, 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 underscore. Itsuka Kendo is out. Underscore, 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 underscore. Cold air tickles the back of Izuku's neck as he leaps from rooftop to rooftop, a feral grin on his face. That was easier than he'd expected, and he'd managed to do it before Todoroki could try to drop a glacier on him again. Next, Bakugo. Underscore, 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 underscore. Itsuka Kendo is out. The blonde bares his teeth in frustration as another extra goes and gets out. Now there's what? 2 people left? Round face and icy hot for sure. He's pretty sure he heard Copycat's name at some point, but chasing after that mask fucker was more important than a magician wannabe. Especially since he went and ran away like a fucking coward. He growls annoyedly, kicking a piece of rubble with frustration. He'd fucking worked his ass off to find Deku, then some extra goes and beats the shitty nerd before him. Bull fucking shit. Deku is his, damn it. He ignores the voices screaming in his head, the ones that sound suspiciously like Deku curled up in a ball and unmoving, and stupid weak Deku, he mutters, kicking another piece of rubble with a scowl. Underscore, 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 underscore. Uraraka is standing on top of a pile of rubble when she sees it, one head of spiky blonde hair and a silvery blur headed straight for him. Duck! She shrieks as loud as she can, already sprinting towards Bakugo. underscore 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 underscore. Bakugo, despite his stubborn and brash personality, knows when to listen. Sometimes, he drops to the ground just as something flies over his head at Mach speed. It lands in the ground several feet in front of him, and he watches with wide eyes as the ground cracks under. Is that an actual katana? What the fuck? He turns around only to see a figure lunging for him. Mask fucker! The blonde's face twists into a snarl, and he leaps towards the bastard, palms crackling with explosions. I'll kill you! Underscore 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 underscore. Uraraka leaps across piles of rubble, desperately trying to get to Bakugo before the villain does God knows what to him. She scrambles to the top of a pile of rubble just in time to see a streak of greenish-blue lighting bounding off of a katana embedded in the ground and slamming Bakugo into a pile of wall that instantly crumbles on top of the blonde, creating a cloud of dust. She freezes. Deku? The masked figure turns towards her, a lone green eye visible, glowing an acidic green. Underscore 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 underscore. Todoroki uses his ice to skate at breakneck speeds through the destroyed city, desperately trying to get to the site of the explosion he heard. He needs to inform them of the test. Otherwise, he skids to a stop when he sees Uraraka standing at the top of a pile of rubble, face pale and eyes wide. Deku, what? He frowns. Why is she saying Midoriya's name? Underscore 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 underscore. Why don't you come out, Todoroki? He says, voice cold. His katana should be fine after that throw. He'd had Hatsune make them, basically All Might proof. He'd heard stories about All Might shattering support items as an attempt to convince him to stick to brawling, like his mentor, and he's determined to have some sort of support item to fall back on in case of quirk failure in the future. The red and white-haired boy emerges from behind the pile of rubble, looking surprised to hear his voice. When their eyes meet, he freezes. Nice to see the remaining 3 contestants in the same place. This'll make things a hell of a lot easier for me. It isn't a smile, more a display of his teeth. As he's talking, he spots a drone right behind Uraraka. Izuku tilts his head, an uncomfortable feeling crawling up his spine as he reaches up and removes his mask. He fixes the camera with a disdainful stare, then turns his attention back to the 3 people with him. Bakugo hasn't been declared out yet, which means he must still be conscious. Another 3-on-1 fight it is. Midoriya. No, he doesn't act like... Like what? Bitter? Angry, he asks, a hint of amusement in his voice, as he watches Todoroki tense. The katana in his hand makes lazy arcs, silver flashing as he strolls towards its twin embedded in the ground. Honestly, I'm surprised you didn't see it sooner. Then again, people see what they want to see. He pulls the sword out of the ground with a neutral expression. Too bad. Tadeko! There it is. Bakugo bursts out of the rubble at full throttle, palms crackling and a sneer on his face, only to let out a roar of pain as a katana pins him to the concrete by the shoulder. He thrashes wildly, yelling out curses and attempting to grab the blade, slicing open the palm of his hand. Izuku clicks his tongue, shaking his head with disappointment. That's not how you do it. You should stop moving, otherwise it'll hit your artery and you'll bleed out in minutes. The blonde stills, tears pricking his eyes as he grits his teeth and glares at the green-haired boy with rage and pain and fear swirling in his eyes. Now, isn't this fitting? I remember another day just like this. Do you remember Katsuki? I bet you do. He walks towards the blonde, who's letting out grunts of pain and trying to yank the katana out of his shoulder. His blood coats the blade, and Izuku grins, foot resting firmly on Bakugo's chest. The blonde seems to register not being called Kaken, and his face contorts into a twisted grimace. Who are you, and what the fuck did you do to Deku? But don't you see? I am Deku. You created me, Kaken. He grins even wider as he meets Bakugo's terrified red eyes. That's right, be afraid. Now face the consequences. His boot slams down on Bakugo's head, and the blonde's eyes roll back into his head. Uraraka screams at the same time that Todoroki sends a blast of fire at him. Lightning crackles, and he throws himself out of the way, yanking the katana out Bakugo's shoulder with a wet squelch. Fire continuously chases him, getting hotter and hotter until the flames are almost blue. Uraraka seems to have frozen in shock, but he keeps a close eye on her. She'll recover soon enough. Until then, small flames lick the edges of his sleeves, not quite consuming, but not going out either. Katana's flashing, he lunges for Todoroki, watching his classmates' pupils dilate in fear. A burst of fire and ice come for him at the same time, effectively creating a cover of steam. Good, that's it, danger sense flares. And he leaps into the air, only to be slammed sky high by a huge glacier. Shit. My gear doesn't work. How am I going to get down pure? Blinding panic overtakes him as he reaches the peak of his arc, the clear blue sky above him and the glimmering block of ice below him, just out of reach. He drops, plummeting to the ground and leaving his stomach several hundred feet in the air. Blood pounds in his ears as the wind rushes past him, and he can barely get enough breath to scream, much less think. Shit, fuck no, I can't die. They're waiting for me. I can't, Mommy. A plaintive voice echoes in his head, breaking his spiral of panic. Why didn't you come back? You promised you'd come back. What? I'm sorry, Kotaro. And then everything stops. Underscore. Oh my God, somebody catch him. Zuko. Fuck, somebody help him. Shigaraki is frozen, staring at the screen, unable to move a single muscle as he watches the green-haired boy plummet to his death with wide red eyes. Hana, please, don't. The boy disappears behind the glacier, and everyone quiets down, staring at the screen with haunted eyes. He isn't, is he? Twice asked, quieter than ever before. No one has an answer for him. Underscore. You're next, Toshi. She screams, pointing a finger at her successor as he's pulled away by her dear friend. The heat and pressure at her side is starting to blister her bare skin and burn through her cape, but she keeps her smile. She won't let his last memory be of her crying out in distress. He screams something, tears streaming from his eyes as he reaches for her. One for All dies in her chest as she turns to face a man in a suit and skull-like mask with hatred in her heart. Then everything goes white. Underscore. Blood streams out of his nose and ears as he jerks out of his deadly fall mere feet above the ground, then drops to the concrete limply, rolling to the side and spitting out the blood in his mouth. Fuck, shit, fuck, please let the cameras have missed that. He shudders, coughing so violently that he nearly misses the sound of 2 sets of footsteps running towards him. That's right, the completion is still on. Every part of his body aches, but he drags himself to his feet. Shit, my katanas, he grimaces. I'll do this bare-handed then. The metallic taste of blood invades his mouth as he slips behind a pile of rubble, clutching his sides tightly. It's healing quickly, but the bleeding in his nose hasn't stopped yet. Blood drips onto his white shirt, and he silently prays that Yanagi won't hunt him down for ruining their perfectly good dress shirt the first time he wore it. Who am I kidding? They'll probably come to one. A's classroom just to smack me. Footsteps approach him, and he clenches his sides tighter. Only there's something digging into his hando. A pink-tinted grin spreads across his face. Underscore. Izuku, Eri whispers, eyes wide as she watches the screen follow the brown-haired girl and Todoroki. She knows they're looking for him. She also knows that Izuku isn't gone, but for some reason her heart aches as she stares at the monitors. eyes flickering from one screen to another, in search of him. Izuku can't be gone. He said he'd come back, and she knows that he meant it. He isn't affected by her curse. She'd come to learn that over the time she'd spent with him. So she watched the screens with glimmering red eyes, unaware of the deathly silence around her, punctuated by a spoon clinking against ceramic. Underscore, 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 underscore. I know Deku, he would never do. Uraraka is interrupted when Todoroki slams into her, sending them both flying into the wall of one of the more intact buildings. The red and white-haired boy throws out a wave of ice spikes to the place they just were. Staggering to his feet, Uraraka is close behind, a glint of determination in her eyes as she taps several pieces of rubble. It's suspiciously silent, the sound of their ragged breaths punctuating the cool air as they look around wildly, searching for the culprit. Several seconds pass before a breeze brings the faint scent of ozone to Todoroki's nose. Could he have used the technology from before to catch himself? But he'd caught a glimpse of it. The metal part looked warped and melted, and certainly in no condition to be used. And if Midoriya used a pressure blast to catch himself, he would have heard it. So, how did he survive? The air thickens, and the scent of ozone gets stronger, the fresh scent mixing with the smell of something burning. He can't quite tell what it is, despite having smelled almost everything burn at some point. It sets his nerves on edge, so when he spots a flash of blue, he sends a blast of ice and fire at it simultaneously, creating a burst of steam. However, before he can even move, something blurs out of the mist, and he sends fire at it again. Pieces of rubble join the assault, but before he can thank his classmate, orange flames meet blue, and Todoroki stumbles back. Eyes wide, he watches the steam clear, revealing blue flames dying on Midoriya's lips. Blood trickles down his nose and neck, and his white shirt is stained with blood and dust. As he surveys the green-haired boy, he hears a battle cry from behind himself. "This isn't my Deku! Give him!" Uraraka shoots forwards, clearly using her quirk on herself as she punches Midoriya in the face. Thwack! Back! Midoriya's head snaps to the side from the force of her punch, and cold green eyes slide to the person above him. Blue lightning crackles to life as he reaches out, hand blurring as he grabs Uraraka and pulls her downwards, lightning wavering for a split second when he punches her in the head. She goes limp, and those cold green eyes are on him, making his skin prickle. Ochako Uraraka is out! Before Todoroki can react, Uraraka's limp body is thrown at him. He catches her and sets her down, only to see empty space where Midoriya was before. Where? A chill down his spine prompts him to look up, and he bursts into flames just as Midoriya's boot slams into his chest. The air leaves his lungs, and he falls into his ass, head bouncing off of the concrete as he sends out wave after wave of ice to try to protect himself. He gasps for air, sharp, blinding hot pain making him groan. Through the pain, he registers his attacks slowing down and the cold presence advancing, but all he can focus on is the pain and how he can't breathe. Gray and turquoise eyes slide towards his opponent, steam billowing out of his mouth as he desperately tries to catch his breath, or get up, or do something. Midoriya watches with cold apathy in his glowing green eyes, blue lightning arcing off of his body as the concrete beneath his feet cracking with each step he takes. Blood glimmers on his face and neck and hands, and his hair floats high above his head. As his scarred, crooked hand, barely covered in tattered, stained gloves, with a glimmering ring stretches out, Todoroki is reminded of a vengeful god, come to deliver punishment on the wicked. That's attractive. The hand pauses, and he gazes at brilliant green eyes, dimly registering 9 glowing lights flickering in the iris before everything goes dark. Underscore, 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 underscore. Izuku stares at the limp body of his classmate blankly. Masoor, maybe it's the concussion talking, but I think I heard him call me attractive. His green hair tickles his ears as One for All deactivates, leaving him alone in a graveyard of rubble and dust and glass shards. Silently, he holds out his hand, putting up two fingers. No seeing doubles, that's good. Though with Second's quirk, he's probably already healed from everything. Thank goodness for that. He probably wouldn't have survived tumbling down Todoroki's steep glacier earlier if that were the case. Shouto Todoroki is out, he sighs. Might as well check on him. I kicked him pretty hard. Izuku walks over to the limp, red and white-haired boy, carefully pressing a hand to the boy's charred t-shirt, right where he'd kicked him. He can already see a bruise forming, and the ribs are definitely cracked at the very least. Nothing Recovery Girl can't handle. He gets to his feet again. One for all sparking. Gotta find the other ones, then. Izuku Midoriya wins the first year's annual Villain Day Battle Royale. The green-haired boy pauses, processing the words he just heard. I won? He looks around, wondering if this is someone's quirk at work or something. But no one in the first year has an auditory hallucination quirk, and Monoma couldn't have held the quirk the entire competition. Currently, his time limit was 5 minutes and 20 seconds at best. So, I won. I won, he murmurs, almost reverently. I can go home. Warm tears trek down his dirt-stained face, and he blankly stares at the cracked concrete below him, an invisible weight lifting off of his shoulders. He lets out a shaky, almost sob laugh, hands moving up to shield his face from the cameras as he drops to his knees. His muffled laughter echoes off of the rubble and debris as he presses his hands to his face, mumbling the truth like a mantra, the words bleeding from his head into the air. I'm one. I'm going home. I won. I'm going home. Underscore, 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 underscore. Aizawa jumps when Eri sprints out of the teacher's room, his gray scarf fluttering behind her. Eyes wide, he leaps to his feet, trying to call her back, but she isn't listening. Her silvery blue hair flutters behind her as she runs, red eyes filled with tears and a panicked look on her face. The other teachers watch as they go, still in shock. No one quite knows how the green-haired boy survived that fall, much less won the competition. The boy on screen looks like death, with blood and tears and dirt mixing together on his pale face, but his smile is so breathtakingly brilliant that no one can bring themselves to speak. Underscore, 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 Izuku. He smiles, wiping the blood off of his nose with his shirt sleeve before pulling on his coat. He wouldn't dare leave it in the arena. That would be inconsiderate to the person who made it. And slipping his rings and mouthpiece inside a pocket, letting out a quiet sigh at the sight of Eri waiting for him at the entrance of the huge gates he'd arrived in. As soon as she sees him, she wiggles out of Aizawa's grasp and sprints to him, throwing herself into his arms. Izuku, 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 dad, Zuku, dad. Dimly, he registers her calling him dad, but instead of panic, it sends a rush of warmth through his chest. That's me, honey. Let me rest a bit and I'll be good as new, okay? Thank God for Second's quirk, otherwise I would have been a lot worse for wear. She nods, face still buried in his chest and arms tight around his neck. Gently, he adjusts her so she isn't touching any of the dangerous stuff hooked to his belt, then walks to Aizawa. Hey, Sensei. Midoriya, let's get you to Recovery Girl. I'm fine, Midoriya, that was not a request. We're going to Recovery Girl. He represses a flinch, pressing his lips together and nodding. Don't worry about the other students. We're having human extraction teams get them, so they should receive medical attention in time. As for the awards ceremony, it'll be held in a few hours. So once you're all healed up, you can get the monetary prize from Nezu. Him again. He huffs, but continues following his teacher. Aizawa is nicer compared to the other ones he's had, but that's probably only because of his quirk. If he'd been quirkless during the quirk assessment test on the first day, he had no doubt Aizawa would have expelled him on the spot, logical ruse or not. There's no use thinking about this stuff. He's going home tomorrow, and he's not going to spend his time moping about his teachers in UA. He's packing his stuff as soon as he gets to his room. And he'll need to pack Eri's things and think of an excuse to leave his mom for a couple of days, or how to sneak out with Eri. His mind whirls as he follows the hero, a faint smile on his bloodied face. Notes. Chapter 40. Villain Day and all that ensues. Pepit. 4. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Droplets of pink water splash into the sink as he presses his hands against his face, trying to block out Recovery Girl's muttering. She'd scolded him about a multitude of things already, and he didn't want to earn any more of her ire. The look on her face when he'd told her that his nose and ears bleeding again wasn't a big deal was terrifying, and the whack she'd given him on his arm was throbbing for several minutes before Second's quirk got to work. Sighing, he towels himself off, wishing he could skip the award ceremony altogether and shower, then get out of here. Now that he knows he can leave, he's buzzing with excitement and apprehension. One for All hums louder than ever as he shakes the water out of his curls. It took him a moment, but seeing the damage he did to Todoroki made him realize that he'd used over 60% without it hurting at all. Of course, he's not entirely sure the exact numbers, but the blue lightning made him feel lighter than ever, and his kicks easily shattered Todoroki's ice attacks. So that has to count for something, right? I'll pay Hatsum a visit after this all wraps up. She can probably use some sort of power measurement device to help me figure out the amount of force I'm currently using, so I can dial it back in the future. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door. He frowns, setting his towel on the edge of the sink and cracking it open. Sorry, I'm almost... He blinks. Yanagi? Their gray eyes narrow, the red string over their eyelid glinting in the fluorescent lights. Their hair looks messier than usual, and they sport a deadpan, disappointed stare that makes him cringe. I knew this would happen. What? Izuku furrows his eyebrows, confused. What did I do wrong? Thankfully, I planned ahead for this. Huh? Planned ahead? For what exactly? He asks carefully, keeping most of the door in between him and his disappointed costume maker. I looked through your costume records before I started making your costume. I saw how many costumes you've destroyed within the span of a semester and a half and decided to make a spare set of clothes, just in case. They sigh and pull a red wrap package out of thin air, holding it out to him. A spare set. Of course, they aren't made of the special fabric Kumo-sensei made for your original, but they're clean and not covered in blood. So change into these for the awards ceremony and thank me later. They shove it into his arms, looking somewhat exasperated with him. He accepts them cautiously, eyeing the pale person with mild suspicion. Thanking somebody could be as small as saying thank you, or it could end up with him on trial as a key witness in a crime. He'd learned that the hard way, and his mom wasn't too happy about taking him to court on Sunday mornings for 3 weeks in a row. How will I be thanking you? Buy the entire costume department pastries on your week off, and we'll call it even. He blinks. That actually is pretty reasonable. How many people are there and what dietary restrictions do I need to account for? I'll text you the details later. Just get dressed before you're late, they say, placing a hand on their hip and making a shooing motion with their hand. Thanks, Yanagi. They scoff and leave. They're really thoughtful. He smiles at their back, then slips back into the bathroom. He has an award ceremony to get to. ______. Usually I only watch the second years and third years for Villain Day, but I watched the first years this year and holy shit, that was crazy. Check out this clip I caught from the live stream. Video, a street view of 4 people chasing a masked figure soaring through the air, their dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Something dark tries to grab them, but they twist gracefully and pull farther ahead of their pursuers. #Villain Day, #UA, #first years, #wow. Chicken tenders, at Hawk's biggest fan. Okay, is it just me, or was the first year's VD fucking trophying? Image. A green-haired boy with blue lighting landing directly on a red and white-haired boy's chest as fire lights up his blood-covered face. #holy shit, #I'm scared, #UA, Villain Day, #green is terrifying. Crush me between your thighs, please, 09. At Miracoy's God. Damn, that was brutal, buddy. Image, blonde-haired boy with black tank top and dark green cargo pants, snarling up at a green-haired boy in a dress shirt with katana in his shoulder and blood pooling under his body. #UA, #Villain Day, #Blondie got wrecked, #green is terrifying. BL00 Dan B0 NNS. At Stain wasn't wrong. Anyone else think UA's Villain Day is actually pretty bad? Like it's going to be pretty damaging for the winner, especially if they have a mutant quirk. Do you remember when read more? Image, masked person throwing a bird-headed boy into the distance, rings glinting in the sunlight. Hash social issues, hash villain day, hash UA High School, at UUA Official. Remember to check out our website for the Villain Day winners' backstories and vote for the best performance within each year. Our overall winners are Izuku Midoriya, first year Rika Yamane, second year, and Najiri Hado, third year. We'll be taking a short break to set up the award ceremony. So if you're interested in our winners or another participant has caught your attention, you can go to our website, www.uahi.org/villainday/#UA#villainday#winners. Tone brain cell at Dodo Dodo. I don't think I'll be able to look at a bush the same ever again. Video, masked person taking off mask, revealing green-haired boy that stares at the camera disdainfully. #UA#villainday #greenest terrifying. Starving artist in my house at Pre-Quirk Media Supreme. Did anyone else read the backstories for the first years? BC there actually? Amsing and super realistic? Like? #villainday #UA. There are always exceptions to the rule. Entry at that one cool chick. That's BC, they got attacked by villains at the beginning of the year, dumbass. #villainday #class. 1A #UA. Foxy Tales. At Fairy Tales, but better. The winner's one is awesome. Nice TPC representation for us late bloomers. #greenest terrifying #UA #villain day. Gang Orca's daddy. At Gang Orca daddy. Nah, Yayorozus is the best my girl will you wenti full on of asterisk K thrick and social juicidates for a hot. SC there and I'm here for it. #UA #underrated #not the winner #villain day. Two beating hearts is the book of the century. At Feetmibich. Did anyone see the way Endeavor's son looked at the first year's winner of Villain Day before he passed out? I want somebody to look at me like that asterisk sighs and looks out a window asterisk. #romance #UA #villain day. I'm screaming. At Banshee, 78. Please, that look had me feeling more single than ever. #romance #greenest terrifying #UA #villain day. Slagus is at Wishedwing03. Plus know their kids. #UA #villain day. Please, calm down. At Chillpill. This thread feels like the beginning of my very own shipping hell. #leave the children alone #UA #villain day. A Queen. At Daisy Chain's Air for Princesses. That right there is a cinnamon roll. His smile, sunshine, his swords, ready to stab you. I think I'm in love XD. Image, green-haired boy kneeling in the middle of a completely destroyed street with two limp bodies behind him and a huge smile on his face. #greenest terrifying UA #villain day #winners. _______________________ When Izuku flexes his bare hands, missing the red artist gloves. They were welcome protection from the chilly air, but they're so torn up and dirty that it would be pointless to put them on. Sighing, he slides on his dusty coat. It was the one thing Yanagi didn't make a spare of, and he likes it. Eri is walking beside him and occasionally squeezes his hand or looks up at him when she thinks he's not looking. He feels bad for scaring her, but it was the only way to get off campus. I'll have to make it up to her later. Dad? Another thing that had suddenly changed. She'd called him Dad as soon as she saw him coming out of the arena, and she hasn't stopped since. It makes his heart flutter and his chest feel warm, so he's not going to correct her. After all, he did adopt her. Yes, Eri? She slows down and he follows suit. They have a little time before the awards ceremony starts, but he'd be fine skipping it altogether if that makes her happy. Will your family like me? His eyes soften, and he turns around and kneels down to eye level with Eri, who doesn't quite meet his eyes, choosing to look at his collar instead. Of course, honey. They'll like you so much, they'll probably all try to give you lots of hugs at once. I promise they're really nice. Big red eyes meet green, and he smiles gently. You don't have anything to worry about. Eri nods slowly, looking thoughtful. Okay, but when will we go visit them? Izuku chuckles at the sudden anticipation in her voice. What about Rylide after this award ceremony? He asks, a playful smile gracing his face. Eri pouts adorably, both hands wrapping around his as she looks at him. But I want to make them something. Yeah, oh? Mm-hmm. Can I make them a drawing? Like the one on your arm? She asks a little hesitantly. Definitely. How long do you need to make it? She frowns in thought, eyes focusing on their hands. One day, Izuku smiles amusedly and reaches out, carefully picking Eri up and spinning around once. Perfect. We'll go visit them tomorrow then. She smiles brightly and everything feels right with the world. Underscore, 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 underscore. He shifts, trying his best not to yawn as he stretches, watching Nezu talk to a third year on the podium above him. The second year would be next, then him. He's honestly kind of bored of standing here, but the monetary prize is in a check, so he needs to wait for it before leaving. The cameras on him make him feel tense, but he ignores them for the most part, fiddling with the rings on his hand. He'd managed to retrieve all of them, though he couldn't get one of the katanas to go back into ring form, so he'd had to leave it with Recovery Girl, along with his ODM gear, and they made great distractions from the creeping sensation that something was about to go wrong. Izuku huffs, hands twitching, as he watches a camera zoom in on his face. He gives the camera person a pointed stare, which makes them frown, but they direct the camera away from him. Thank God. An eternity later, Nezu approaches him, a toothy smile on his face and a box in his hands. Izuku watches the principal warily, the feeling of something is going to go wrong getting stronger. Midoriya, Principal Nezu. Congratulations on winning the first year's Villain Day. I'm sure it was difficult, considering your opponent's various experiences and outlooks on life. Here is the check. Now, before I end the ceremony, I'd like to let you know that your week off of campus will be spent with a police escort, considering your unique situation. Police escort. The words echo in his mind as he freezes, eyes fixing on the rat below him. This little fucker. No wonder he was getting a bad feeling. The rat was scheming again, and anger wells up in him. He was dangling freedom on a string, then yanking it right out of Izuku's grasp just as he got a solid grip on it. You know what? Two can play that game. Underscore, 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 underscore. Nezu's fur stands on end, as a sickly sweet smile spreads across the green-haired boy's face. His tail stops swishing as the boy's eyes fix on his beady black ones, making his claws slide out and dig into the soft wood of the box he's holding. He knows the cameras are recording, though, so he does his best not to let his smile waver. Nezu, am I the suspect of a crime? Midoriya leans in, resting his hands over Nezu's paws in a way that has his ruff rising. It feels gentle, but everything about the boy's eyes scream that this is a threat and that he needs to yank back his paws now. He clears his throat, his smile getting a little wider when he notices a camera zooming in on their talk. Of course not. What would you believe such a thing? He asks, keeping his tone pleasant. Because as a legal adult, I may not be escorted anywhere by the police or the heroes without my consent, Midoriya says, his sickly sweet smile fixed in place. Oh. Nezu hadn't calculated that the boy would have taken advantage of his status as a legal adult to defy a teacher, given his near-crippling anxiety around authority figures. But this certainly makes things more interesting. Furthermore, if you attempt to send people to discreetly follow me, such as private investigators, I will make their life a living hell. So much so that UA will go bankrupt from the reparation fees they have to pay, he says, green eyes glowing with something that makes the rat's hair stand on end. I will be leaving campus tomorrow morning. You will leave myself and Eri alone when I choose to do so, as will all UA staff. And if you try to pull bullshit like this again, I'll be transferring to Shiketsu and taking several of my class members with me. After all, no one wants to be in a school that has been consistently attacked by the same villain group for over a semester, do they? The principal's ears twitch at the subtle threat. They both know that anyone transferring to another hero school this year would be jumped on by the press, and they'll tear UA apart if more than one student left at once. The green-haired boy's smile turns angelic, and he squeezes Nezu's paws gently, making his claws dig into the wood even more. Thank you for this honor, Principal Nezu. I never thought I'd be accepting a prize from such a wonderful hero at my dream school. He cheers loud enough for the cameras to pick up on, taking the box from Nezu's paws. The principal returns his smile, hiding his still-out claws by folding his hands behind his back. It's an honor to bestow it upon a brilliant student such as yourself, Midoriya. His fur doesn't settle down until he's in the safety of his office, and even then, he still feels the phantom intensity of those toxic green eyes. It would seem I've miscalculated. Notes. Writing the wrong grammar and punctuation for the social media parts had me cringing, but I got through it. I'm done with Villain Day at this point, so if you want any sort of clarification, let me know in the comments. Have a nice day, night.